Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at WrestlingHubOfficial and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. Before becoming a corporate figure, he has had his own share of enemies in the industry. Married to Stephanie McMahon, Triple H has attracted the ire of many for gaining power through unethical means. This is Wrestling Up, and here are 10 wild things said about Triple H. Not many people may know this, but there was a time when the two unbreakable friends had a fight. They were always best friends before Shawn's injury, even when he was fighting addiction. Triple H himself does not drink, and he had the job of keeping Shawn straight. Even now, the two are best friends. In 2001, WWE wanted Shawn to be at WrestleMania 17 for a segment. Unfortunately, when he showed up, he was wasted. That led to him being out of the segment, and Triple H felt it made sense that he could not be in there. Shawn was angry that Triple H agreed with the decision that he should not be included, and had a very bitter, angry, and sad backstage fight with his best friend. He accused him that he had thrown him under the bus. They became estranged after. Michaels would later mention that they didn't end up talking for over a year, but ultimately buried the hatchet. Stephanie McMahon was always close with Triple H, but there was a time when she was only on-screen partners with him and not in real life, though during that time she thought that her future husband might not have been into women at all. In an interview in 2014, she revealed that she felt Shawn Michaels and Triple H were gay and were together after watching them on TV during her days in college. Given the crazy and sometimes X-rated shenanigans, she would not be the only one to question their sexuality. They compared their private parts regularly and even kissed each other on TV. This is one of the things that the fans will possibly never forget. Triple H was in a feud with Booker T soon after he made his way to WWE. He made fun of Booker and made comments that were interpreted to be racist in nature, like this promo. "I think you're a little bit confused about your role in life here. You're going to get to go to WrestleMania, but the fact is, Booker, somebody like you doesn't get to be a world champion. People like you don't deserve it. That's reserved for people like me." That's where the confusion is. You're not here to be a competitor. You're here to be an entertainer. That's what you do. You entertain people. Hell, you entertain me all the time. Go ahead, do a little dance for me. Go ahead, give me one of those spinneroonies. Entertain me. That's your job. Don't be embarrassed. You're here to make people like me laugh. With your nappy hair and your suckers. Hell, I was laughing all week long after you won that battle royal. Fans called him out on the racial nature of the promo, but according to Triple H, the comment was about Booker's past as a criminal. Apparently, according to Bruce Pritchard, Brian Gerwitz wrote that promo. Fans also talked about how Triple H purposefully buried Booker T, hitting him with the pedigree but not covering him for almost a minute. When he finally did, Booker did not even get to kick out. Triple H is known for being the father of NXT, helping to introduce a more hard-hitting indie style of wrestling into WWE. However, he did not always look fondly on indie backgrounds, thus he had issues with CM Punk. Punk talked about him in the promo he cut in WWE, but he further elaborated after leaving the company. Punk was set to be a part of the 12 Rounds 2 movie for WWE, but when he asked Triple H about it, he was given the runaround. Instead, Randy Orton was handed the role, and Punk was never clearly told why he was not a part of it. Punk was also in a match against The Undertaker, but when he asked if he was going to be paid the same as John Cena or The Rock or even Triple H and Brock Lesnar, he was not given importance. On top of this, Punk revealed he was asked to take a drug test shortly after he suffered a concussion. He complained about it to Triple H, who said that Batista had the same test done but dodged the answer when Punk asked if he had been tested. Punk went on to reveal he had a voice call from Triple H 2 days before his marriage. He sent a text to Triple H who was getting married in 2 days and would call him after the honeymoon and asked about a royalty check that he never got. Triple H did not reply to him, and then on his wedding day, Punk received a letter telling him that he was fired from WWE. Chyna appeared on Vince Russo's podcast a week after Triple H had made comments about her work in the adult film industry. She talked about how Triple H treated her badly at a time. She said she had planned to get married to him when she found out he was dating Stephanie. She apparently let him do what he wanted because he was doing it to get to the top of the card. She said that one night she had waited for Triple H so they could leave together. A security guard would eventually tell her that there was no one in the building. Hunter had apparently taken the jet and left without her, and that night he got voice messages from Stephanie Stephanie on his phone. She later questioned him and he apparently hit her. This same incident has been refuted by X-Pac, where he has said that he had pushed her back when she was getting too confrontational, but he never hit her. He said that apparently Chyna was the one who told him that Triple H had never hit her, but she had spoken very differently about him. The abuse was not the most unbelievable and wild thing revealed. Chyna went on to talk about how she was fired when she was the only one who didn't know that Stephanie and Triple H were in a relationship. She said that Stephanie made harsh comments and said that she was in love with Triple H. In the end, she was let go by facts and told she was not needed. Billy Gunn was the only one who helped her at this time. Triple H and Chris Jericho have never really been on the best of terms, and the fact that they don't like each other has been very clear. In an interview with MLW, Jericho confirmed, "In the early 90s, it is no secret there was no love lost between he and I. We didn't like each other, we didn't get along. We had great matches, but there was always personal issues." And these issues with Triple H turned out to be over Chyna. Chyna was working with Jericho in the ring when she was still together with Triple H. She was a powerfully built woman and Jericho overcame his initial apprehension and worked with her. Accidentally, once he gave her a black eye during one of their matches, Vince McMahon had apparently asked him to work stiff in their matches to make it more believable. He had asked her if she was okay, and she had said it was. However, Triple H was not happy, and he spoke to Vince McMahon and asked him to apologize for the black eye. Jericho revealed that it was because of Triple H that he got heat, and that led to major issues between the two of them. Kurt Angle is one of, if not the best wrestlers. Unfortunately, Angle did not always have the best experiences in WWE. When he left originally to join TNA, he was vocal about his issues with the company, and during the interviews he would put up, Triple H would be a target. He had issues with Triple H holding back other wrestlers and not wanting to share the spotlight with them. With the Sun in 08, Angle shot on how the backstage powers of Triple H was a huge issue for anyone in WWE. Angle revealed that Triple H did not like the fact that he was a better wrestler than him. On top of that, he said that if Angle was ever rough in the ring with Shawn Michaels, Triple H would get Vince McMahon to speak up. I had to deal with that stuff all the time. I'd wrestle Shawn and I'd get a little rough with him. Then I'd get heat from Vince because I beat on Shawn too much. So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm tired of the two long-haired sissies. If they can't go up against me, then don't put them up against me. It's safe to say that their issues are now behind them. The New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg were close to Triple H as a part of DX. However, there was a time when Triple H was on the outs with them. In an 06 shoot interview, the Outlaws called him a bad person, saying Triple H was unwilling to help his friends to get higher up the card as he preferred to sit on top of the roster. They said that doing anything with Triple H while under contract would have seen them released. But Gunn said that if he met Triple H in 06, he would have beat his brains out. As shocking as this seems, it appears everyone is on better terms. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon are one of the most iconic couples in wrestling. However, his father-in-law apparently made it uncomfortable for Triple H when the relationship he shared with Stephanie became clear. It was a unique experience. If you've ever met Vince, any situation like that is a unique experience. As we begin to have a relationship that begins to grow, there's every awkward moment that you can imagine that everybody has. That first dinner at your girlfriend's, at her parents' house, except I've been working with her dad for all these years, just making it as uncomfortable for me as possible just because he thinks it's funny. There's so many humorous moments and all of that, but it's wonderful. One of the things that I think is great for us, Steph and I, we often say from a team standpoint, there's nothing we can't accomplish, and that's how we look at it, whether it's the business or anything else. We work together and it's a great 1-2 punch. The two stayed together as Vince tested Triple H every chance to make sure he was really in love with Stephanie. Shawn Michaels revealed in his book that Triple H had the idea for the Montreal Screwjob. He said that he, Vince McMahon, and Triple H were talking and Triple H was the one to suggest him. If he won't do business, then you do business for him. Vince McMahon took the blame for it then as years went on to reveal who is behind this. Stephanie McMahon has for years been an intriguing figure on screen and behind the scenes in WWE as the chief brand officer. And over the years, several have talked about Stephanie McMahon and their issues with the daughter of the WWE chairman. This is Wrestling Up, and here are 10 wild things said about Stephanie McMahon. Vince Russo is known for his controversial booking career. These days, in appearances on podcasts and interviews, Russo is known for cutting into Vince McMahon. Though when it comes to Russo, McMahon's worst mistake is clear. As he said, you can't put someone as head of creativity if they're not creative and they're not good at it. Her problem was that once Vince put Stephanie in that place, there was no going back because she is his daughter. You were not going to say that your daughter failed, so putting in that position, there was no going back. If it had been someone else, I would have been fired. He went on to say that when he was confident he would be joining WWE and presented them with a year-long plan, he knew the writing staff were not happy for him to join. Talking on the List and Your Boy podcast, Russo called out Stephanie again. During that time, Stephanie was not there. I think Vince told her he hired me. I had one conversation with her. She was so disrespectful to me. When she hung up the phone, I knew there's no way this is going to work. She didn't want me there. Her and Triple H wanted the power. There have been rumors that when Stephanie McMahon was underage, Randy Savage was intimate with her. The rumor was denied by most. Still, some like Savage's past girlfriend Stephanie Bellers talked about how Randy always liked younger girls, and when she was dating him, wanted to have a three-way with her sister who was only 17 at the time. Stephanie Bellers added that Randy Savage had told her about his relationship with Stephanie when he was high on ecstasy. He told me one day when we were on ecstasy on the beach. I think he didn't mean to tell me that, and then the next morning he goes, "Did I tell you anything last night on the beach?" I'm like, "You sure did." He knew exactly what he said and he was like, "Crap," because it was kind of like the truth drug. Once he got that, he just started telling me everything. She knows and he knows what it all was. The origin of the rumor came off the offhanded comment that Randy made on his members only site in response to being called a dinosaur by Triple H. A user drew a conclusion from the comments made by Savage that he had been intimate with Stephanie. Macho had his way with Stephanie. She was about 14 back then, back in 94-95, and that Vince found out, and that was the true ending for Macho Man in WWF. Makes sense as the gent never was asked back or has been really showcased in those nostalgia video packages they do from time to time. It should be noted in 94, Stephanie McMahon was 18, not 14. Since 2015, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Paige started off the women's revolution with apparent huge backing from Stephanie. She appears for each and every announcement about the development of the women's division, as former WWE star Gail Kim took offense at the portrayal of the women's revolution and talked about her own experience in the company. Stephanie could have been fighting for us a long time ago. She was there every time I worked there and she had zero interest in fighting for the women. So for them, everything is business motivated. Them having this women's revolution, and it's from the fans. The fans demand it through social media, and Vince heard it and made it happen. And I think finally the girls are getting treated the way they want to. It is known among fans Triple H was dating Chyna from 96 to around 01, which was about the time Triple H started to date Stephanie. Chyna found out after she saw love letters from Stephanie to him. She said she confronted Steph over it, and Stephanie confessed that she loved Triple H. She took me into the room, we talked, and she goes, "Well, I love him, he's my man, I'm sorry if you feel that way." And I shut her up. I said, "Shut up, call your dad in here before I'm going to choke you out. If you really feel that way, take control of yourself." Then Vince came in and said, "Let's do a new contract. I know this is tough for you, but it's going to be okay." Then I went home and I got a fax saying they didn't need me anymore. After her release, WWE never mentioned her until after her death and subsequent Hall of Fame induction. Stephanie is clearly not that different from her father or even her husband. Early on in his career, Triple H was known for burying talent, with him attempting to stay in the main events. Vince McMahon had Titus O'Neil suspended for 90 days due to holding his arm during a WWE segment while the chairman was walking to the back. And according to the Wrestling Observer, Stephanie took out some backstage heat on a WWE superstar on screen. There was a segment on Raw where Stephanie told Caitlyn to never interrupt her again. This apparently was based on real life, as Caitlyn approached Stephanie and talked to her, interrupting her while she was speaking to someone else. Soon after this, Caitlyn went on to lose the Divas title. WWE was known for sticking to their own style of wrestling. The indies were developing, as writers in WWE were not supposed to know anything about the outside of WWE. A former writer talked about how Stephanie shouted at him for knowing about non-WWE wrestling. Dr. Ron John Chibnall told John Laurinaitis he had been a fan of his matches from his days in AJPW, though this did not go down well with Stephanie. Stephanie told me that a WWE writer didn't need to know about other types of wrestling to be successful. She said, "If I let wrestlers know I had that sort of knowledge, I would come across as some type of Superman mark and never be able to earn their respect. I felt like it was impossible to be respected. They hated you if you didn't know wrestling, and they looked down on you if you were a fan. This was during the early 2000s. Chibnall went on to quit when Paul Heyman was removed from creative. She even had an issue with Court Bauer when he used the term blading, which refers to a wrestler cutting to make blood appear. She told me never to do that again. I said, why? She said, only the boys can talk about getting color. I said, well, I was in wrestling. You hired me for my experience in wrestling. I've been in wrestling since 1998. That was 6-7 years ago. This is 2005. This is a little shady, but that's what she wants, and I was like, fine, no problem. Stephanie and WWE never had the best relationship with AJ Lee once she started speaking about the company's issues. During the Oscars, Patricia Arquette talked about the disparity in women's pay in her speech. Stephanie thanked her for speaking up on the issue, in response to which AJ Lee, who was working in WWE, called out McMahon on her hypocrisy, saying female talent in WWE had record-selling merchandise and had been part of some of the highest-rated segments on the show several times. In spite of that, there was a clear disparity in their wages, saying yet they receive a fraction of the wages and screen time of the majority of the male roster. Stephanie replied to AJ thanking her for her opinion, apparently hinting that things would be better soon. The matter was not addressed further on the public forum, but AJ would not be a part of WWE too long after. On top of that, Gail Kim talked about the differences in wages. They put their bodies through the same thing the guys go through. These girls should be getting paid equally. If there are two girls that are going to main event a pay-per-view, they should be getting paid the same amount as two guys main eventing. Vince McMahon is competitive. He hates to lose and even tried to prove he could out-wrestle Kurt Angle by tackling him. Talking about playing pool with Vince and Linda, Triple H said he and Stephanie managed to beat Vince at their holiday home. It was real close, but we ended up winning. Vince was so mad he had to leave and go sit outside on the deck for a while. Though like father like daughter, Stephanie could not stop boasting about the win and was rubbing her father's face in it. She apparently sang throughout the night, "You're tied to the whipping post, Dad," to irritate him. This led to Stephanie and Triple H hearing Vince scream in anger on the other side of the house. Vince McMahon is known for being eccentric, and in the early 2000s and late 90s, he was getting his family involved in controversial angles. One of the weirdest saw Stephanie abducted and almost forced into a dark marriage with The Undertaker. She was also a part of a storyline where Triple H apparently married her while she was unconscious. Once Vince wanted to do an incest angle with his family. Paul Burchill and Katie Lee Burchill were brother and sister, and they were portrayed as an on-screen couple. The idea was approved by Vince, but it didn't make it to TV. Vince suggested he be the father of Stephanie's baby on screen. On the McMahon DVD that was released, Stephanie revealed she had to force her father to abandon the idea. He was not ready to listen and said if he could not, then Shane could be the father. Still, it never made air. Stephanie usually portrays herself in a professional light, though on the Howard Stern show she talked about her relationship with Triple H and even her preferences in the bedroom, saying she didn't mind using the back door, and also the one time she tried bondage, it was unsuccessful. She also spoke about how she did not mind getting intimate with girls. "I've not done it with a woman, but I've had a woman come on to me before. Actually, at our last pay-per-view, I almost had hot lesbian action. See, my guy has lost a match and I lost a bet. So I was in the ring and these two hot chicks, one was in front and one was behind. One of them does that Playboy night show, so they were starting to kiss me and rubbing my arms and rubbing my legs. Yeah, I kind of liked it." She even said perhaps she would not be against getting intimate with another girl in front of Triple H. While Randy Orton is one of the biggest WWE stars, over the years many have come forward about his behavioral issues backstage. This is Wrestling Up, and here are 10 wild Randy Orton stories. Orton has lived through many eras in wrestling. Early on, the locker room culture in WWE was such that tenured stars were expected to dominate in the ring and backstage, with him at times taking liberties with talent. On YouTube, former WWE star Amy Weber revealed Orton and Edge harassed her while they were traveling. She said she went to the men's locker room to get ibuprofen for her broken tailbone, but the two stars were not happy to see her there. She said that she was sleeping on her seat on a flight when Orton came from behind and slammed her chair. "We were all sleeping. Randy decided to come up behind my chair and he slammed into it like a linebacker so hard that I landed on the floor of the airplane. And then he said to me, 'You're gonna learn.' She would also be woken up having a drink thrown in her face while she was asleep by Edge." Weber revealed she did not feel safe in WWE after getting harassed, and that she could not understand why this was happening. Early in his career, when Randy was in Evolution and faced the Dudley Boys while teaming with Batista, the Dudleys disliked the faction. They felt that they were controlling the locker room and everything that happened, and took the opportunity when they faced them to take out some of their dislike. Batista's tricep injury was so bad, WWE almost replaced him in the faction with Mark Jindrak, while Orton's injury saw him miss 4 months of action. On Busted Open Radio, Bubba said this about seeing Orton years later. The very first day we saw each other in 2015, when me and Devon had returned to the WWE, we instantly shook hands, hugged, sat down and talked for 5 minutes, and realized that we had both matured. We both admitted that we overreacted to the situation. Former WWE commentator Jim Ross revealed Vince McMahon had doubts surrounding Orton prior to signing him in 2000. He was somewhat of a controversial hire. Vince was the problem child that went to military school, and Randy was the problem child that went to the Marines and got discharged. Big time Randy's past was a problem for Vince, but it's one of those deals where I said, Vince, you got a second chance, so why not this kid? He's only a third generation talent, and his father and his grandfather were outstanding in-ring guys. It's wild to think that there was a chance Orton would not be hired by WWE, with him still there day in and day out as a top level talent. Randy Orton went to KUPD, a radio station in Phoenix, where he put down The Rock and Mark Henry, with an unfortunate victim of his words being Kelly Kelly. He said he could name 10 people who had slept with Kelly in the WWE locker room. Still, he did apologize, saying, yesterday I put my foot in my mouth and I need to try my best to make it right. I owe Kelly an apology. The fact that she has dated a few guys I worked with doesn't make her a bad person and is no one's business. I got caught up in a live radio interview and brought Kelly's personal life into it. It was uncalled for. Kelly, I hope one day you can forgive me. I do, however, understand if that doesn't happen. Please everyone trash talk me all you want, but please drop this topic out of respect for Barb. When Legacy was formed, it was one of Randy Orton's greatest runs, with Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr. by his side. As it turns out, Randy disliked DiBiase from the beginning. He said Orton had told him when they had first met that he didn't like him. The Viper changed his mind later on after working with him. Still, things went badly when Ted was supposed to turn face and confront Orton. Instead, Rhodes and DiBiase stayed heel, with Orton turning face. DiBiase took on his father's gimmick, and after a couple more years left wrestling, with him apparently unhappy with his treatment from WWE and Orton. Former WWE writer Cora Bauer revealed Randy Orton exposed himself to new writers as an initiation. For every new writer that would show up, he comes in the room, puts his hand down his pants, pulls out his, touches himself, then says, I'm Randy Orton, shake my hand. Oh, you don't want to shake my hand? You're big leaguing me? That's messed up, man. Should I tell Vince and Steph you won't shake Randy Orton's hand? Bauer added Orton did not harass him on his first day because Stephanie was present in the room at the time. Kevin Eck also confirmed the story, saying, I don't have any comment on the recent stories about Orton's backstage behavior, other than to say that I always avoided shaking hands with him during my time on the WWE creative team. Mr. Kennedy commented on his weird behavior too. I remember my boots were sitting there and he kept dipping his into my boot. I was like, what are you doing? He used to do stuff like this and we'd be riding in the car and I'd be like, Randy, there's no one else around to find that funny. Even Roman Reigns had issues with Randy Orton. WWE had huge plans for Reigns after the Shield split. Following the breakup, while Seth and Dean were feuding, Roman had a feud of his own against Randy Orton. Though the matches between the two live events garnered no fan interest, Reigns was not happy backstage and revealed Orton was taking control of the match, with his slow style to ensure Roman didn't look like a big star. Roman apparently believed Orton was hurting his push, and the two talked about it. They settled it backstage and thankfully managed to move on as Orton gave Reigns more control. In what is possibly the most notorious story about Randy, former WWE Women's star Rochelle Owen revealed Orton vandalized her belongings using tanning oil and baby lotion, saying she would not put it past Orton to defecate in her bag. She was asked to join WWE and was not familiar with all these superstars. When she asked Orton whether he was from Canada, Randy stormed off, saying he hated Canada and her. As she said, near the end of the day I was doing a pre-tape with Mr. Bischoff, and it took us about an hour or two. Then I went back to the changing room and all of my belongings, my nice belongings, had been destroyed by Randy Orton, who had snuck into the female changing room. The reason Randy did what he did had nothing to do with the competition. His behavior had everything to do with how pathetic this person is, how psycho he is. Maybe mama wasn't nice to him when he was a little boy, or dropped him on his head. He had some real issues with beautiful women. I don't know what they are, but he definitely does. She said Randy later had issues when she was friends with Mark Jindrak, who was Orton's best friend. In fact, Randy wouldn't even talk to Mark Jindrak, the reflection of perfection, for a while because of that. He's an animal. animal. He's an absolute animal. What kind of man acts like that when he likes a beautiful woman? This guy is just absolutely out to lunch. Be it his team with John Morrison, his alliance with Maurice, or any of the other ways he tries to gain advantages in the ring, The Miz has been consistent in getting heat from the fans. And with him being a WWE and reality superstar, he's had a crazy career. This is Wrestling Up, and your 10 wild backstage stories about The Miz. During the early days of the pandemic, Miz turned up to wrestle while ill. At a time when everyone was being more careful, this caused outrage backstage, and the Usos heard about it and got angry. As a result, Roman Reigns reacted by withdrawing himself from WrestleMania. Roman Reigns made the call himself. It was interesting because he was there and made the call. It had to do in some form with Miz being sick and the Usos not being happy about it. It's a weird story because if you followed it, he should have stayed home. Everyone's got a risk, but his risk was high. For a guy who already has enough money to live the rest of his life and take care of his kids, it was his decision, but that shouldn't have been put on him. I don't know who made the call, but it was an obvious call that wasn't made, so I don't know where in the WWE medical system it fell through, but it did. While he's appeared in multiple films, Miz has a name for himself appearing on reality TV, coming full circle from his MTV origins. When he first starred in a movie, he texted The Rock with him sharing the advice given. I texted Rock because, let's face it, he's the biggest action hero in movies, so I said, "What's your best advice?" And he told me to just be natural. He said that too many guys try and be this big guy, but it ends up looking robotic. He told me to act natural, have fun, and enjoy these scenes, enjoy yourself. While Miz may seem like a jerk on TV, he's capable of nice gestures. After WrestleMania 28, there was an after party that Maurice and WWE writers were not invited to, so Miz did not attend and took the writers out and treated them to dinner. Those in pro wrestling usually don't take kindly to what they see as outsiders coming into the business. When Miz came into WWE from a reality TV background, he was not liked by those wrestling for the company, one of those being JBL. When it came to JBL, there's been talk about his history of bullying backstage. While Miz was unfortunately destined to be his victim, JBL was not restricted to taking shots at the Miz behind the scenes, as he would call Miz out on TV and would make fun of him on commentary. He even admitted the same in an interview. Did I haze the Miz? Hell yes. A lot of people want to talk about me and my hazing. Yes, I did. I make no apologies about it whatsoever. When I started, guys were hazed, and for good reason. They wanted to know that in a riot, which we had a few back in the day, were you going to be on the side of the boys or the fans? Nowadays, there's no room for it. The corporate, sterile world that is WWE. When Miz came in, most of the hazing was me working, me on the mic, me talking to him. I gave him as much advice as I possibly could because I thought he had the ability to be a good heel, but I'm not going to apologize for hazing him. Miz and Maurice are known for being one of WWE's most highlighted couples with their reality show Miz and Mrs. They came together thanks to WWE's Diva Search in '06. As Maurice revealed the first time she saw Miz, he was a judge for the contest. In Marina Del Rey, California, I walked in for my audition for the Diva Search and Mike was sitting there and he was one of the judges. I had this perfect speech that I learned in the plane on the way to Los Angeles from Montreal because I couldn't speak a word in English. She cuts this promo in French, she gets up in my face, I'm loving every second of it. This girl is it. No one can call Miz a normal person. He has his odd quirks. He tried to make simple attempts to get Maurice to go out with him, including group dinners. When that failed, he went for something bigger. Maurice revealed they were in Kansas City and she was trying to get back to her hotel. Miz called her on the phone to pull over at a specific spot. And she recalled, "It's 2 in the morning. I'm trying to get back to my hotel and you called me on my phone while you were driving nearby. You said, pull over, pull over. I found myself in a parking lot of a porn shop." Miz explained, "You might think this is a little weird, but I don't want to get in the friend zone. I wanted her to know where my mind was at." But it worked, alright? We sat there in the parking lot and talked for 3 hours with a person that doesn't speak English. That's an A+ in my book as a first date. During his time in WWE, Alberto Del Rio became a world champion, with many feeling he had more to give before his last release in 2016. Talking about The Miz, Del Rio said he hated him. "To be honest, I don't like most of the guys. I hate The Miz. This is not part of the show. I really dislike that guy. I've tried to punch him in the face several times, not in the ring. I mean outside the ring. He's like a little girl. He's always running away from me. There's a big difference between The Miz and I. I'm a real athlete. He's just a loud, stupid little kid. He's one of those guys who was probably bullied when he was in school, and that's the reason now that he's so loud and wants to get the attention from everybody." This came after Miz, in a match with R-Truth, failed to catch his former tag team partner properly. Truth fell and hurt himself, and Miz was shouted at by wrestlers backstage, including Triple H. Del Rio took it more personally. One of the best moments of The Miz's career came when he cut a promo on talking smack about the style of wrestling that he practiced and why it was better than the high-risk style of Daniel Bryan. The promo was off the cuff, however there was something in it that was premeditated. Miz told Bryan before that he wanted to vent on the show, and Bryan had given him some tips of what to do. Miz had asked Bryan to hit him, but Bryan said he would simply walk away. It was admittedly the better move and left an impression on the audience. After the promo, Triple H said Miz was the best promo in current WWE. Miz appeared on WWE Backstage once talking about changing the culture, which was a shot at CM Punk, as Punk had said something similar when he debuted for the show. Punk ended up responding aggressively on Twitter and deleting the post later, saying, "Go suck a blood money covered in Saudi Arabia, you dork." In 2006, Chris Benoit told Miz he could no longer change in the locker room. The Miz had been accused of eating chicken over a wrestler's bag and had dropped crumbs on it. "One day I was eating a piece of chicken in the locker room. Someone comes in and goes, 'Dude, you're eating over my bag.' And his bag was right there. I was like, 'Oh, no. He goes, 'Dude, you just got stuff all over my bag.' I still don't think I got stuff on his bag, but I was saying, 'I'm sorry, I apologize.' Another person walked in, 'Oh, you got stuff on his bag? How could you do that?' Unbelievable. And I thought they were joking. It was almost like I was taking the chicken and just throwing it in the locker room and just smearing it all over the place. That's what I felt like, and I'm appalled. I'm so sorry, I did not mean to do it. I'm just trying to do the right thing here." And Chris Benoit goes, "You were not allowed to dress in our locker room. I think you should just stay out of the locker room." Eventually, it would be The Undertaker who gave The Miz permission to change in the locker room again after 7 months. Benoit apologized to The Miz later and made sure to make it known that it was only because the traditions of the locker room were to be respected. During this time, The Miz had to change in his wrestling gear in the bathroom. Jim Ross also talked about the incident and revealed how close he came to getting beaten up. Chris Benoit policed his territory. Benoit represented the business as best he knew at the time, but he didn't take it to the next step and put the crossface on The Miz or beat him. If he beat him up, none of the talents would have said anything, but nobody deserves to be physically assaulted at the workplace. The verbal thrashing, have at it. Exile, have at it. Physicality ain't gonna happen. Back in that time, WWE was very different from the company that it is today. Love him or hate him, Roman Reigns is the face of WWE. His pairing with Paul Heyman turned out to be genius and exactly what he needed. Although Reigns is now more than capable of delivering hefty promos, Heyman adds that fiendish nature to his faction. Despite that, thanks to his career, there's been more than a few things said about him. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the 10 wildest things said about Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is one of the top stars in WWE, and thanks to his position and experience, he has become a locker room leader backstage. Dave Meltzer revealed Reigns was furious at Enzo Amore. The situation with Amore was discussed, where a report from several weeks ago regarding him being kicked off of the bus by Reigns due to heat with the locker room was acknowledged. The incident in question, we were told, that broke the camel's back, and this happened some time back, was him talking very loudly on his phone to someone and saying things that those who couldn't help but hear him thought were negative about the business, while bragging about how much money he was making from the business to that person. Meltzer went on to add, Amore was receiving the mistreatment. In the beginning of his career, Miz had been thrown out of the dressing room, and according to the report, that's what happened with Enzo. Thus, if there's one thing that's proven, you don't get on the wrong side of Roman Reigns, as it is his yard after all. Daniel Bryan always had the crowd behind him after a certain point. In 2015, when fans wanted nothing more than for Bryan to be pushed, the company decided to get behind Roman Reigns. They eliminated Bryan from the Royal Rumble while Roman went on to win. They had announced Bryan's return to the Rumble, as a result of which fans wanted him to win, but when it did not happen, they turned on Roman. On top of that, Reigns went on to defend his title shot against Daniel Bryan at Fastlane. The audience hated it, but the one person who might have had something to say, Daniel Bryan, talked about Reigns and John Cena, as well as what WWE management thought of him. They are more the prototypical WWE superstars than I am, so when I came in, I don't think any of the top WWE people looked at me as, oh, this is somebody who we look at as being a future main eventer for WrestleMania, or even a future WWE champion, or even a future Intercontinental champion. They looked at me like, oh, this guy is good at what he does, he's a good little wrestler, he can go out there and he can perform, he might get a little bit popular, but he's never going to be the guy. Whereas somebody like Roman Reigns or John Cena, people look at them and they think, oh, this guy could be the guy, let's see what happens. And that was never me. Reigns getting booed is now the correct reaction with his heel turn, but the journey to get there saw WWE attempt to push him as their top babyface. Ironically, Reigns defeated Bryan in a match recently on SmackDown, thereby banishing him from the brand. As the father of one of the top stars in wrestling, John Cena Sr. has voiced his opinion on a variety of things. One topic he touched on was Roman Reigns and his storyline with Jey Uso, and how his reception has changed. The mistake they made with Roman was, you don't like roast beef, but I'm gonna shove it down your throat anyway. What they should have done is kept him in a tweener role, where he could either be a nice guy or SOB, depending on the day. When he was in the Shield, he was just part of a faction. The other two carried him, and I think even Reigns will admit that. Now they've brought him to a point where he belongs. They got rid of that Shield BS, and now he's a terror. He also said that even if Roman was as good as he was with John Cena gone, WWE did not have a face of the company any longer. There will never be the man or the woman in WWE ever again. You're not going to have The Rock's, Steve Austin's, CM Punk's, or John Cena's anymore. After the Shield broke up, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins were in a feud with Roman Reigns busy elsewhere. He was facing Rollins' friend from the Authority faction in Randy Orton. As it turned out, Roman and Randy did not get along, as Roman was furious with him. Orton's wrestling style included the use of a lot of rest holds, something that can kill a hyped up crowd. Roman was unhappy with Randy and called him out for it. He even said that the Viper was killing his career thanks to his wrestling style. Randy apparently badmouthed Roman behind the scenes. They have since resolved their differences, with Reigns taking a friendly shot at Orton recently, so a lot of respect out to Drew. Randy's always been Randy. He seems like he's a little less lethargic, and he's got a little pep to his step, and he's enjoying himself. So I think that's always been a thing for Randy. If Randy's having fun, I think it translates. If he's not, you can definitely see when he's not. It's funny, like he doesn't care. If he's not into it, you're going to kind of see it, but he seems like he's into what he's doing. Roman was one of those WWE superstars that the company wanted to push to the moon, whether the audience wanted him or not. However, in what was one of the lower points of Roman's career, he failed a drug test in 2016, violating the wellness policy, so WWE had him drop the title cleanly to Rollins, riding Reigns off TV. Roman apparently had to apologize to the locker room. When Reigns returned, he was not used in that big role, and it took a while before WWE started to once again book him with the same prominence. John Cena is not known for putting over other stars early in his career. In recent years, however, after taking a step back from regular competition, Cena focused on raising other superstars through his matches. One of his most notable feuds was with Roman Reigns, with Cena even praising Roman. Roman is walking in his own steps. He follows in no one's footsteps. This happens every time a marquee attraction is moved on. I went through it. Everybody said it with Steve Austin and The Rock, and I understand that, but Roman is crafting his own path, and I think it's very important to say that he's doing a great job. I feel this is the best he's ever been, and that comes with comfort. I don't know what got him over that hill, but he's over it, and that's a very important one to jump over. At Mania 33, Roman had one of the biggest matches facing The Undertaker. Taker was in a lot of pain and could not give the performance he wanted. The next night, Roman, who was a face, got booed out of the building for defeating Taker in what fans thought might have been his final match. He was already getting booed, but beating Taker made it much more audible. A writer told Roman that the audience would treat him as a heel and to use the energy, so he looked around and said, "This is my yard now," before dropping the mic and walking away as the arena exploded, with this becoming one of the best moments of his career. Roman was set to face Goldberg at WrestleMania for the Universal title. When the pandemic set in, Reigns, with his family and being immunocompromised thanks to issues with leukemia, withdrew himself from that match. WWE hastily replaced him with Braun Strowman. In the weeks that followed, no commentator seemed like they were mentioning Roman Reigns. In fact, more than a few times it seemed they were intentionally avoiding mentioning him. The Wrestling Observer talked about what Vince McMahon told commentators. Notes from the 410 TV tapings in Orlando. The show opened with Strowman out. He said that when opportunity knocks, you open the door. Right now, the instructions on TV are to not ever mention Reigns. Strowman said he took the door off its hinges and put Goldberg down for good. While it was to keep his return unexpected, Roman's name being banned from TV was bizarre at first. Even before Roman came to TV, according to reports, CM Punk did not want him to be a part of the Shield. Punk was the one to pitch the original idea for the group. In his version, he wanted Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Cassius Ohno. WWE went with Reigns as opposed to Ohno. They were never enemies in WWE, but Punk took shots at Reigns, saying the only thing WWE cared about was making Roman look good. Reigns ended up taking shots at Punk's Pepsi tattoo. It's still crazy to think what could have been had WWE listened to Punk. It's not often families get involved in wrestling when it's not part of an angle. Originally, what fans may not know is in 2015, Roman was supposed to defeat Brock Lesnar and win his first ever WWE title at WrestleMania, and instead Rollins cashed in Money in the Bank and assaulted Reigns and Lesnar, making the match a triple threat and becoming champion. Sika, Roman's father, was furious backstage and even confronted Vince McMahon. This story is not well known, but it was then on Reigns to stop his father. Sika felt betrayed, but as it turned out, he had nothing to worry about, as Reigns went on to have an amazing career. Sasha Banks is one of the most prominent names in women's wrestling. As a part of the Four Horsewomen in WWE, she was one of the key figures in the women's revolution, taking part in many of the first-time matches for women on the main roster, main eventing, and even taking part in Hell in a Cell bouts. Women's wrestling has come a long way from there, and it is in large part due to the recklessness with which Sasha threw herself into the wrestling life. Her feuds with Charlotte Flair and her partnership and rivalries with Bayley have made for some of the best moments. Though there have been a lot of things said about Banks, some of them crazy. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the wildest things said about Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks had an iconic style when she first came to the WWE main roster. Her pink and purplish hair saw her stand out, and she became the focus thanks to her amazing wrestling. Unfortunately, another wrestler who has a similar look to Banks' current style called her out. In February 2021, Impact wrestler Kiera Hogan took to Twitter during a segment with Banks. Hogan talked about Sasha's attire as well as her style, speaking about how similar it was to hers, seemingly implying that Sasha had stolen her look and entire gimmick after seeing her. "I'm gonna leave this here. Check my fit though. Often imitated, never duplicated. You can't do it like me, boo. If you want it, come and get it though. Make sure you want it before I give it though." Kiera and Sasha's styles certainly matched, starting from their hair color to their attire. Kiera would later say that it was not the blue hair that she objected to, implying that it was the entire attire of the boss that she did not appreciate. Booker T talked about some of the things Sasha Banks is missing and has been open about not liking her in-ring work, even saying Banks did not have what it takes to get to the main event level. Sasha stood her ground. As Booker would go on to say, it was no one else's business but his and Sasha's. "I'm sure someone that you've met rubs you the wrong way and perhaps is not your favorite person. I did not say I hate her. I said I did not like Sasha. That can mean a lot of things. My thing is this, Sasha Banks and I, that's between us. Stay in your lane and trust me. You will do a whole lot better for yourself. You don't want to cross in my lane." One of the craziest rumors doing the rounds about Sasha is that the WWE chairman Vince McMahon can't stand her. Although Sasha's feud with Charlotte saw her win the Raw Women's title many times, she never held the belt for long. In fact, she would lose the title back regularly in a matter of weeks. It was only with her most recent reign as SmackDown Women's Champion before losing to Bianca Belair that Sasha had her title for a long period. In fact, Sasha had almost never won a title defense match. In the end, her recent booking has shown rumors were either wrong or McMahon changed his mind about her. Sammy Guevara may now be one of the top stars in AEW with the best prospects for his future on their roster, but last year he got into a lot of trouble with his previous comments about Sasha Banks from an interview. During the Speaking Out movement, Guevara's interview on the Raw's 4th Hour podcast in 2016 surfaced. There he joked when he saw Sasha at a WWE tryout he wanted to go her. Sammy made the comment as a joke, but it could not be tolerated. He issued an apology to Banks and was suspended from AEW, going to sensitivity training. I've made stupid, inappropriate, and extremely offensive comments in my past. In my idiotic mind, I thought I was being funny and using words and terms that represent nothing but horror and pain. I am truly sorry for my hurtful words and actions, and I will never forgive myself. I also want to apologize to Sasha Banks for my unacceptable comments. She's an amazing person who did not deserve to be the brunt of my offensive remarks. I spoke with her earlier and she helped me learn a gigantic lesson, and I thank her for that. Once again, I'm sincerely sorry. During his suspension, AEW donated Guevara's salary to the Women's Center in Jacksonville. Much like Booker T, Bubba Ray Dudley is also known for putting his opinion out there. On Busted Open Radio, he criticized Sasha for her rant about fans. Banks spoke about how it was a custom for many fans to show up to the airport early in the morning asking for autographs. Sasha said these were the fans who usually sold the autographs on eBay. Bubba decided Sasha had spoken out of turn and asked her to be more humble. Banks never publicly spoke against Bubba, but she still held her ground on the topic of toxic fans. Ronda Rousey won her match against Sasha Banks at the Royal Rumble. It was a big win for her to retain the Raw Women's belt. She complimented Sasha later in a backstage interview, saying she respected Banks but felt the star did not respect her. I try to be as respectful as I can, but I'm not sure if the feelings are mutual. She's a mixed signals kind of girl. Rousey said the 4 horsewomen of MMA was real in comparison to WWE's version. If they held the 4 of us in the same regard as we do, I'd have respect for that, but to them, this is nothing more than marketing. They don't have that bond that we do. While this was part of a storyline, Ronda would later open up about wrestling being fake. The way she spoke about them in the backstage exclusive interviews of WWE not always being scripted gives rise to doubts if that's actually how Rousey feels about the WWE women and Sasha Banks. "2020 was one of the best years for Sasha. She became the 3rd Women's Grand Slam champion, held the tag team titles, and defended a singles title successfully. Though it was revealed during her appearance on Steve Austin's podcast, there was a time when things were not going well. One of the hardest things that I had to do was ask to leave WWE. Vince was like, no. He said, I'm going to give you 30 days to think about it. And it took more than 30 days. This place can definitely get to you. It's hard. Thankfully, she stayed and went on to find more success. In rumors that have since been denied, Sasha and Bayley were apparently so frustrated with their loss of the women's tag titles to the Iconics at WrestleMania that they were crying backstage and threw a tantrum, though the Iconics addressed what really happened. Immediately after the match, we were all in tears, all crying, just filled with emotion. We got pictures together, which we then posted on our Instagram. I know there's all these rumors going around and we didn't see anything. The rumors to us is that we didn't see anything that we're hearing. Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose, is one of the top stars of the last decade, be it during his time in WWE or when he made the move to AEW. Since his debut as a part of the Shield, it was clear his charisma was off the charts. Following the breakup of the faction when WWE was busy pushing Seth as a villain and Roman as a face, Moxley made his own place through his personality. In the first year of AEW's formation, he made a splash when he left WWE as one of the first big names to do so and headed over to AEW, where he became a key part of their roster, winning the world title. With such a persona, there's always more than enough stories circulating about Moxley. This is Wrestling Up, and we're looking at some of the wildest things said about Jon Moxley. One of the most awkward moments for Mox was when he appeared on the Steve Austin podcast. Moxley was asked about his childhood and that made him uncomfortable. Moxley shut down and refused to cooperate while Austin kept trying to push, with both looking frustrated. Austin later revealed he talked to Moxley after and they both regretted how their interview had gone. In fact, he expressed wishes to do it over again. Austin apparently apologized to Moxley for being too intrusive. This haunted me for so damn long. People just think that I'm this guy and there's this Darth Vader force field around me where I don't feel things. I do. When I've not made someone look the way they're supposed to look, that haunts me. So now we're back on the same page. I'm looking forward to talking to Jon Moxley. Moxley made a cameo during an episode of WWE Backstage a few months back when Renee Young was still working on the show from home due to the pandemic. Moxley was already a part of AEW. While Young was hosting, Mox decided to play a prank on her, appeared next to her while holding their dog. The moment was funny as Renee was startled and Xavier Woods and Booker T laughed. However, in the end, it turns out that Moxley appearing on the show was not well received by WWE, and it was Young who ended up catching heat. Moxley revealed how rough his childhood was in an interview. He grew up in the east side of Cincinnati. He talked about having to sell drugs to avoid being beaten up. In the end, wrestling would be the escape he needed. It was easy to get the feeling like all the garbage from the city ran down and washed up there, so that gave me a chip on my shoulder very early on. Moxley is known for being a violent star and he wanted to give fans at WrestleMania 33 one of the best matches. Unfortunately, his opponent Brock Lesnar was not having it. He apparently arrived and listened to all the pitches Moxley had and shut down everything. Instead, he worked the match of Mania as if it was another house show, leading to Moxley saying that Lesnar was lazy. Brock comes in at 6 p.m. and changes everything, and Vince is like, okay, we're gonna go with Brock's idea, and made everybody else look stupid except Brock. And the writers are just sitting there watching it in a room and they're just like, come on, we had this great ending to the show. Moxley was not the only WWE star upset with his position. There were times he didn't agree with WWE's booking decisions. Sin Cara was another star who left WWE and talked about why Moxley made him mad. He said Moxley had been given everything and was still upset. Let me give you a perfect example. Dean Ambrose left, right? Moxley left the company. He was given everything. He was a Grand Slam champion, and even after he left, he was miserable. Imagine me who never got a chance to wrestle for the US title, the Intercontinental title, or the tag title. Imagine me and how I would feel. He felt that way and he was given everything. It was tough for me to look for those opportunities because I never got them. And it wasn't because of lack of effort or talent. It's because somebody in the office decides who they want to pick. It's unfortunate, but it's true. At Fyter Fest 2019, Shawn Spears hit Cody Rhodes with the ungimmicked part of the chair, resulting in the AEW EVP being cut open and bleeding. Cody revealed how Moxley reacted and shared a story of how he ripped into Spears backstage. I saw out of the corner of my eye as I headed for the training room Moxley and Tony Khan just ripping Spears to shreds. And I hadn't seen that side of the owner, and hadn't seen that side of Moxley, as some days he says half a word to you, other days he's talking your ear off. He's such a unique personality. It was cool to see that, because he cared about my health and he cared about the product, and I could see him pantomiming to Spears on how he was supposed to do it, and Tony's agreeing. Because you've got a wrestler like that, he's clearly got to be right, but he's wrong. I really appreciate he cared about me. He's wrong because I'm the one who told Spears to swing from the side. Former Ascension member Victor talked about Moxley and how he acted backstage. Victor said Moxley's match with Corbin was called off at the pay-per-view and Moxley ended up being frustrated. He cursed in the locker room but ended up controlling himself when he looked around at the other stars in the room who were from 205 Live and hardly ever on TV. One of the best things I can remember from seeing somebody in a locker room do was it was supposed to be Moxley and Corbin at a pay-per-view, and it was the last TV before it, and something happened to where their whole match got cut, and they only had so much time to do something. And I remember the writer coming into Mox and telling him this, and Mox goes, "What the f?" And he's about to say something like, "I can't believe it," and I see him like look around the locker room, and that was one of the locker rooms where it's jam-packed of a bunch of 205 Live that aren't doing anything, and a bunch of other guys who were struggling, and he just goes, "F it," you know what I mean? So it's hard. Everybody there is fighting, and it just never stops. It was a hard thing to deal with. Renee Young and Moxley are one of the most adored wrestling couples. Young talked about their marriage, revealing how unorthodox a method Moxley chose to propose to her. We were going to bed and he like busted out the ring, and we were like, oh man, I guess we should do this now. So we ended up going on Yelp and we found a 24-hour pastor to come to our backyard. It was so handy, and his name was Pastor Pete, and he lived around the corner from us, so he was there. They were very concerned, by the way, because it was 1 o'clock in the morning, so technically it was Sunday, and they were very concerned about us calling. They were like, "Is everything okay? Have you guys been drinking? What's happening?" We're like, "It's fine, you can come down." So we had to get a witness, and we called and woke up a friend of ours and got it done. We got our marriage license about 6 months ago when we were in Reno. There was a live event in Reno and I was there with him. We just happened to walk up to City Hall and we went and got our marriage license then. So we'd been sitting on it so we could do this spur of the moment, "Hey, let's get married tonight" kind of thing. Moxley and Renee also talked about their different sex life. We're very unserious, sarcastic, jokey people. If I ever came up to Renee and said, "Oh, you look so beautiful in the moonlight," you'd laugh. You'd be like, "What the f?" Yeah, if you came like crawling up to me like a cat in lingerie, like a Victoria's Secret ad or something, and you were like dead serious, I'd be like, "What's going on? What's happening?" I mean, for sure I'm in, but that's just not how we operate. Before coming to WWE, Moxley was already a legend in CZW. While there, he was wild and regularly bled enough to turn the wrestling mat red. In a shoot interview with CZW owner DJ Hyde, he revealed Moxley was more than wild during those days, and even talked about Moxley getting intimate with a woman while he was wearing a bear suit. Hyde talked about how Moxley lived with Sami Callihan, and Callihan found Moxley spread-eagled and passed out drunk on the floor dressed in a bear suit. When Sami picked up his camera to take a picture, he found the memory full, and when he checked it, he found that Moxley was apparently in the bear suit having sex with a girl until he passed out. Chris Jericho's prominence in wrestling has never been higher than now, after having successfully become the guiding force for many WWE stars to leave and head to AEW. As the first big-name wrestler to leave WWE and join the company when it was founded, Jericho has risen to new heights. Though that does not mean that the superstar is not controversial. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the wildest things said about Chris Jericho. Jericho is someone who has been in contact with Vince McMahon for a long time. The first time Vince offered to bring him to WWE from WCW, he invited Jericho over to his house and made him uncomfortable without giving him any details of what was really going on behind the scenes. Later, Jericho would find out that it was a test by McMahon to see if he would talk about the secret meeting, and when he didn't, he found he could trust Jericho. Since then, the two of them have had various confrontations over the years, and Jericho has always stood up to him to make sure Vince took him seriously. Vince and Kofi Kingston had a disagreement aboard the flight in 2010 where Vince told Kofi he was not over with the audience. Jericho encouraged him to fight Vince. Kofi would note, "It's one of my vivid memories in sports because it's the wild world of wrestling. You know what I mean? We were on the way to a press conference. As we were getting there, Vince started trying me a little bit. He's like, 'You want to fight an old man?' I'm like, 'Whoa, what is going on? What's happening?' I got kicked off the plane because I wouldn't fight him. Okay." Jericho did come down and he said I had to go back up there because in this weird world world of wrestling, this is how you had to get respect. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go up there and try to fight my boss. We get up there and we start going back and forth. All of a sudden, I got double-legged on the plane. I'm like, oh my god, we're really fighting. This is crazy. But you've got to keep in mind, the aisle in the plane was 3 or 4 feet long. All of a sudden, he started laughing. If I'd have known that you want it, I'm thankful that Jericho told me to go back on there, because who knows, in this weird world of wrestling, if I don't go on there, all of a sudden, he doesn't have what it takes. I don't know if I would have had the career that I would have had. A very different time back then. It was a wild night for sure. Kingston revealed Jericho celebrated the fact that he listened to him and stood up to Vince by trashing Kofi's hotel room. The world of wrestling is a strange one. Sebastian Bach, the vocalist of Skid Row, was someone who has never liked Jericho. The singer accused Jericho of using pre-recorded voice tracks and miming during live concerts. I have an open mind about everyone. If I read on blabbermouth.com that some band says we're the future of rock and roll and we're the next thing after the Rolling Stones, I think this must be incredible. What have I been missing out on? So I checked out one video during which the singer was 100% miming to a tape on stage at the Rock Pile in Toronto. I thought to myself, that's weird. That's not the next Rolling Stones. So I watched another video where he was opening up for Nickelback in an arena, and again, he's miming to a tape. You can go watch it for yourself. And then someone said, here's a clip of him singing live. Legit, bro. And it's him miming to a tape again. It's crazy obvious. It is not my opinion, it's fact. It is not me starting a fight, but don't tell me what singing live is, because I have never used tape. I don't even know how to do that. Jericho denied the allegations. Bach would also insult everything about Jericho, saying pro wrestling sucked and that Jericho wished he was a rock star. Bach is not the most well-loved singer, and Jericho had said kind things about him before, which makes his accusation even weirder. Fans called out Jericho's wife for being present at the Capitol on January 6th. Jericho had previously said he was not political, but then fans found out he had donated thousands of dollars to Donald Trump's campaign. Protesters stormed the US Capitol that day as fans uncovered his wife was there watching apparently. Jericho's wife changed her Instagram profile picture, showing her standing with women in Washington, D.C. holding a Trump sign. Fans figured the picture was from January 6th. Jericho was not present in Washington that day, but his wife was attending with a group of women. T-Bar was defending the Retribution online when it had come under criticism for being unimaginative in WWE. Jericho found his tweets hilarious and retweeted one, simply saying, feeding fuel to the fire of the war of words between fans and T-Bar. However, T-Bar didn't take long to reply to Jericho. Health economist Andrew Friedson had said that an estimated 250,000 cases of COVID between August 2nd and September 2nd were because of the Sturgis rally. Jericho's band Fozzy had performed there. T-Bar responded to Jericho with a tweet which simply said, and then posted screenshots of lots of news stories that had covered that rally. Jericho was making waves after he came to WWE given his charisma. As a result, he got an offer to host a new game show called Downfall for ABC. Vince McMahon was unhappy with the fact that Jericho was getting a role. McMahon said that Jericho had not told him he was auditioning and flipped out backstage before he told Jericho he couldn't do it. Jericho was naturally not happy with Vince's ruling and decided he would call the WWE boss. Jericho threatened to go to Connecticut and punch his boss in the face. Vince gave him his address. Eventually, things between them were solved anticlimactically after Vince offered him a new contract. Jericho debuted in WWE in '99 and over the years became one of the most prominent stars. WWE was high on him as he defeated The Rock and Steve Austin in one night. He was 35 when he decided to leave in August of 2005. Fans felt Chris had issues with WWE creative. Jericho's contract was up at the time and he chose not to renew it. In reality, he was burned out at this time from wrestling for 6 years without a break. He also didn't enjoy the fact he was not regularly main eventing. It was a good decision, as after that, every time he returned to WWE after a few breaks, he would reinvent himself and recharge his support from fans. Jericho has been married to his wife Jessica since 2000, having 3 children. A few years back, he was on the road with WWE when photos came out that showed him fraternizing with Kelly. Randy Orton even made an unproven comment saying she had slept with at least 10 guys in WWE. The photos with Jericho showed them having drinks and kissing in public. What happened behind the scenes with Jericho and his wife is unknown. Jericho's original opponent for Mania 25 was supposed to be Mickey Rourke. Rourke was nominated for an Oscar as the star of The Wrestler. Unfortunately, the match did not take place because Rourke's management felt being involved with WWE would hurt the actor's chance to win an Oscar. The two appeared on Larry King. Jericho was in character, but Rourke was unaware. As a result, he was naturally upset with Chris. In fact, Rourke told everyone how much he hated Jericho. On the night before Mania, Rourke appeared with 3 bodyguards that would be there to beat up Chris. Rourke wanted to fight Jericho himself and hurt him, but Jericho went on to have a conversation with the actor and explained how the things that he had said had been in character because they had been on camera, leading to the actor to understand better and putting things behind them. The Triple H of today is very different from the Triple H of old. There are plenty of stories about the old Triple H burying wrestlers and making sure they didn't make it in WWE when they came there. He had issues with plenty of stars. The dislike between Chris Jericho and Triple H was rather well known among the wrestling world. The game was not popular in WWE at the time backstage, because he had beaten Booker T in a squash. He didn't put over Ric Flair, and he had also been taking time to bury Chris Jericho backstage. On his podcast, Jim Ross revealed Triple H used to point out small issues with everything Jericho did backstage, trying to get him in trouble. He had more of a say over what went on in WWE, as he started to be a part of production meetings at the time and used his influence to keep Jericho and others down. It was regrettable, especially when you're talking about 2 guys like Booker T and Chris Jericho, who really, you make yourself look bad by inferring that they don't belong for whatever reason. Ross also called out Triple H for the things he said at the time, saying that Hunter was jealous. The Jericho thing was, I believe, quite simply that Jericho had a lot of charisma naturally, that Hunter may not have had at that point in time, and the fact that Jericho was under 6 feet tall, it's pretty BS. There were also other reasons that Triple H didn't like Chris early on, and that was because during his matches with Chyna, he took Vince McMahon's words to heart and didn't hold back, which ended up giving her a black eye. Triple H was still dating Chyna at the time, and he confronted Jericho over it, threatening and berating him for not being able to be careful enough to avoid a stiff shot. Jim Cornette is known for his colorful opinions and often talking more than just a little bit when he should not. He is known for having an opinion about every single thing that happens in wrestling, and not only that, but he takes them personally, attacking those in no uncertain terms on his podcast to his bevy of rabid fans. He found himself at odds with a comment that Chris Jericho had made, which saw him call out the veteran wrestler. On AEW, Jericho had taken a rather interesting bump from the top of the cell during the Blood and Guts match. The bump, which was supposed to look dangerous, in reality looked really tame, which garnered quite a bit of criticism from wrestlers in WWE and other places. Among them were Shotzi Blackheart. Jericho decided to take the attacks personally and was not happy with the comments. He fired back at those making the comments and said that those making these comments should keep in mind that they would probably be released from the company in 6 months and looking for a job, and then he would remember that they had said such things. There's a couple of chicks in WWE who said some stuff, and they should probably not have said that. They probably weren't trained any better, and in 6 months they'll probably be asking us for a job anyways, and I'll remember that. So we'll leave it at that. The comment was uncalled for from someone like Jericho. Jim Cornette decided to call him out on it and took to social media to do exactly that and warned him about not being sexist. Looks like somebody's grumpy about criticism again. Isn't chicks in WWE a sexist remark? Some people watch for those things, you know? CM Punk is one of the main stars in the wrestling world whose addition to AEW has allowed them to bring in a whole new audience, with lapsed fans tuning in to see what Punk will do now that he's back. However, with Punk, there have been more than just a few stories about him thanks to his presence in WWE and the manner of his exit. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the wildest stories about CM Punk. One night, a bunch of TNA personalities were out for what was supposed to be a nice dinner. Before they knew what was happening, a scuffle broke out amongst them. However, this so-called fight was a one-sided affair with Teddy Hart getting the better of CM Punk. Sabu, the hardcore wrestling legend, was the one who stepped in and helped calm Hart down. Thankfully, it seemed Punk did not suffer any real damage. The fight itself did not last as others stepped in. Punk had no chance of hitting Hart back as they were pulled apart. All in all, the entire altercation lasted around 20 seconds. Punk himself had no offense, neither was he hurt badly since Teddy was pulled off. To those who were present, it seemed Punk was not going to make a significant comeback. Punk happened to lose his MMA debut fight to Mickey Gall by first round submission, which hasn't helped his reputation either. This one-sided scuffle led others to question whether Punk could possibly have a successful MMA career. Hours before their match at Mania 27, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler were running through their match in the ring. For reasons unknown, Punk, who was going to wrestle Randy Orton that night, joined the two. He ran at Cole, serving him a knee lift, after which Cole's tooth goes flying. There was blood everywhere, and Punk had started to panic. He apologized and volunteered to pay for dental treatments. Cole was more concerned he would lose the biggest payday of his career, yet Cole has made it clear Punk and him are friends. Sadly, this was not the only dental issue Cole would face that day. During his match with Lawler, he took a missile dropkick to his mouth, which is how Cole ended up losing 2 teeth in one day. The entire situation was unfortunate for Cole and Lawler, considering this match was possibly the worst in the event's history, and Lawler's one and only Mania match. The Undertaker is one of the most highly respected personalities in wrestling, with him serving as a locker room leader in WWE. Despite his intimidating persona, Punk has been brave enough to offend him. Since the dead man takes his responsibility very seriously, he confronted Punk regarding his casual attire despite being WWE champion. Punk completely ignored his advice, claiming John Cena does the same thing. Taker did not appreciate this attitude, as he was concerned about the company's image. Not only did Punk managed to rub Taker the wrong way, he offended other WWE higher-ups. Punk later faced Taker at Mania 29 in a classic affair. He did admit that he never wished to be a part of this feud. It has been no secret that Punk and Taker do not get along. Their relationship might have gotten a little better after their bout. Still, there's a lot to be said about the way Punk left WWE and how it might have affected The Undertaker's opinion of him. There was a point in time where Punk was frustrated with WWE, considering they could not or did not want to push him since his contract would expire shortly after. What they did do was throw him a bone. They handed him a microphone and allowed him to walk out in the arena after one of John Cena's matches. They basically gave him a chance to air out his grievances. In his pipe bomb promo, he called Vince McMahon's daughter Stephanie idiotic and his son-in-law a doofus. Punk spoke of his time in New Japan and Ring of Honor, even breaking the fourth wall. Many believe this promo was completely unscripted, though Punk did clarify that several of his comments were approved. This was chronicled in the WWE CM Punk Best in the World documentary, as the incident made him loved by the media and in demand for his TV and radio appearances. Since Punk's contract was going to expire, this gave him the opportunity to part ways with the organization with the belt in hand. He would have still been one of the greatest technical wrestlers of this generation had he not taken the microphone in WWE, but he probably would not have reached the same stardom. Given the impact, it could have been supposed that Punk practiced that promo, but such was not the case, as it was improvised. Throughout the span of his life, Punk has avoided drugs and alcohol. He has been vocal about his reasons on not consuming intoxicating substances. Punk has also taken proactive approaches in calling out wrestlers who do not follow a similar lifestyle. His advocacy for his cause has even led him to get drug-free tattooed on his knuckles. Despite this, WWE went ahead and demanded Punk take a mandatory drug test, not just once but twice. Allegedly, he was required to retake one test to help out other stars who had failed the test. TSN MSN reporter Aaron Bronstetter shared a tweet last year regarding Punk's drug test. Based on the most recent USADA testing history update, USADA has not tested Conor McGregor since January, and CM Punk has submitted more samples than 4 UFC champions, 3 of whom have competed in 2020. It is vital that fighters pass USADA's protocols so they can fight under the UFC banner. Despite not having a successful career, he has said he is still technically signed to UFC, and most recently did commentary for Cage Fury Fighting Championships. CM Punk came to WWE and made his finishing move, Go to Sleep, famous. Long before Punk used it, it was being used by another wrestling star in Japan. Kenta took to Twitter during Punk's time in WWE and posted a video of him hitting the GTS move on Misawa. Kenta said the video was from the early 2000s, long before Punk came to WWE. Kenta went on to demand royalties from Punk for using the move he created, saying, "I don't give a f. And let me tell you one more fact. I always open my arms for that someone pay royalties to me." Colt Cabana and Punk were best friends. In fact, while going on his tirade during the pipe bomb on WWE, Punk brought up Cabana and talked about how WWE never gave him a fair chance. When Punk left, he went to Cabana's podcast to talk about issues related to the company. Unfortunately, that podcast was the result of WWE bringing a lawsuit, which in turn led to the end of their friendship. Punk had apparently promised to cover legal fees of the lawsuit for Cabana, but after they won against WWE, Cabana tried to sue Punk, claiming he had not fulfilled that promise. In the end, the suit was settled. Replying to a fan's accusation, Punk talked about how if Cabana was in the right, he had settled for no reason. Why'd he ask to settle then? I wanted it to go to trial, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Enjoy donating to the eventual Woe Is Me GoFundMe account. He went on to talk about how he was the one who was sued and he had not started anything with Cabana. Punk would add, "I loved the guy. Would have done anything for him, and the irony is, if he would have just asked for the money, I'd have given it to him. Instead, he tried to extort me." CM Punk's comments have caused issues with several stars. One occasion came when Lana decided she had enough and fired back. Punk was on WWE Backstage as an analyst. There, he decided to have fun with one of the most popular and controversial feuds, where Lashley and Rusev were going at each other. At the time, Lana, the legitimate wife of Rusev, was in a storyline relationship with Lashley, having left Rusev for him. Punk decided to have some fun and fantasy booked the feud between the two in a loser keeps Lana match. Lana had enough, writing in a since-deleted tweet, "I know you've been away from WWE for several years. Perhaps moving forward, you will favor WWE and FS1 by refraining from misogynistic comments like Chica. Thank you." Seth Rollins and Punk were never on the best terms, with Rollins issuing a challenge to Punk to return to the ring only for Punk to ignore him and not accept the challenge when he was on Backstage. Now, with Punk moving to AEW, Rollins has continued to take shots at him. Following the debut of Punk in AEW, Seth made a tongue-in-cheek tweet calling Gable Steveson the best wrestler in the world, and highlighting how he was coming to WWE. Roman Reigns then went on to make fun of Punk's debut, saying legitimate needle moving, pointing out that this year's SummerSlam was the most viewed and highest grossing WWE edition of the pay-per-view of all time. When Punk left WWE, he spoke on many issues in the company. If there was one superstar he targeted more than others, it was Ryback. Punk claims he was legitimately hurt multiple times when wrestling Ryback. Ryback did not take too kindly to Punk saying these things about him, and decided to shoot on the superstar. In a move no one has been able to associate with Ryback, he was sensible down the line, and actually spoke positively of Punk. Recently, Cabana and myself had a talk, and he was very apologetic, even though he never said anything, but it meant a lot because we always got along in the few encounters we had. I will never know why Punk chose to say the things that he did, and it definitely did not help my career. All I know is he was banged up and miserable during the periods we worked together. either. I think people have to look at it this way. How many other people are out there saying that about me? I was always respectful of him in his time there, and before our runs together he was always good to me. Working in WWE though has a way to bring out the worst in everybody. I have made jokes over the years via social media, and it's fun to get a reaction from his followers, but if I were to ever see him I would tell him, if I really did ever hurt you, I truly am sorry, but I don't think it was the right thing to do to say the things you did. Life is too short to hold grudges, and I truly wish him the best in his life. Jeff Hardy's last feud before leaving WWE was with CM Punk. While Punk taking his title might have stung, the complete difference between the lifestyle of the two was clearly obvious. Hardy left and would not be in a good place in his life, having issues with addiction. In one rant, he talked about Punk opening up on all his issues with him. What the hell does straight edge mean again? The first ever straight edge world champion. I think Christian said it best. CM Punk, I think you're a nerd. I get cocky every now and then and I say, you pay to see me. I made CM Punk a superstar. I'll say it like this, as he sticks up middle fingers mocking Punk. I can't do that in your company anymore, but in this world I can do that all I want to. You should follow me. You should listen to my preaching. It will make you live life the right way. CM Punk, your way is not the right way, brother. That's what's cool about planet Earth. We're all different. If we were all like you, then I'd rather live on Pluto. You're way too cocky inside and outside the ring. It's kinda strange when you go to see some homeboys on shows. You got guys like The Undertaker coming to say, hey Jeff, how are you doing, man? All these other guys going, hey Jeff, how's everything going for you, man? You see me, you never say hello to me, man. Walk by on your way to the shower or whatever. I just leave like, you know, whatever. Yeah, f that guy. I have only one message for CM Punk. F you. I made you the straight edge superstar you are, and I still don't believe that, because I believe you take Ambien to go to sleep, and if you didn't know, that's a prescription. This is Wrestling Up, and you're watching the wildest things that have been said about Brock Lesnar. Lesnar has come to achieve many great feats after his debut in WWE, but he didn't always have the best impression of the company. Apparently, Lesnar used to be quite miserable all the time despite his many successes, such as becoming the youngest WWE champion and winning King of the Ring in 2002. It was revealed in an episode of Ruthless Aggression documentary series that Lesnar was sick of WWE. He despised traveling 3 to 5 times a week. One of the former WWE heads of security, Jimmy Noonan, in an interview with Fox News revealed how Lesnar would behave backstage. Noonan also disclosed how Lesnar was not a fan of crowds. Noonan revealed one day Lesnar happened to be cranky because he had already been to the airport twice that day. The then WWE champion proceeded to threaten Noonan at the airport. Noonan's statement was, we walk into the airport at the same time and he looks at me and goes, Noonan, if one fan comes up to me and asks for an autograph, I'm gonna punch you right in the face. And that would be the beginning of my day. It was thanks to Jim Ross, the former voice of WWE and a backstage advisor and recruiter for the company, that Brock Lesnar was introduced to WWE Chairman Vince McMahon. They met for the first time in Minneapolis. Ross and Briscoe were trying to recruit Brock for a while. Since they were scouting him during the end of his senior year, they were banking on getting him to WWE. It was during a TV taping in Minneapolis in 2000 when Vince walked out to get into his position at broadcast that he saw Brock for the first time. He was talking to Briscoe and a few others. Vince literally did a double take and then turned around and marched himself over to introduce himself to Brock. At this time when Vince was walking over, Briscoe told Brock, this is the big boss, be on your best behavior. Truth be told, he had no idea who Vince McMahon was. On meeting Brock, Vince said, my god, he's a Viking. Jim on the other hand said, I was thinking more like a Hereford bull. The point was that both men were impressed with how athletic and fit Lesnar was and still is. Anyone who follows or is a fan of Lesnar's knows he's not a people person. Brock has always been the type to enjoy his personal space. Rip Rogers, who is one of Lesnar's trainers at OVW, recounts the story where Brock did not respond well to some friendly ribbing by Charles Wimberly. Rip describes Brock as a man's man. Brock was new to the wrestling world, which meant he did not know all the traditions. When wrestlers mess with you, it means they like you. Little did Brock know that Wimberly had only played an innocent prank on him. Charles had smarted off to Brock only to find himself having been backhanded. Brock did not hesitate even for a second before hitting Charles, who was then crying on the floor. The others in the gym were in shock and asked Brock what he was doing, to which Brock replied, "God damn it, he said something." Rip informed Brock that Charles was merely ribbing him. Brock, being clueless about wrestling norms, learned on that day that wrestlers kid with you when they like you, and that Charles had not actually intended to offend him. Brock has always been intimidating even backstage. At WrestleMania 19, he attempted a shooting star press on Kurt Angle, after which he hurt his neck. He started throwing things backstage to everyone's surprise. Brock would not let anyone near him, including medical personnel. Only Briscoe, the former WWE executive and talent scout, was able to calm him down. Briscoe got Brock to go to the hospital and stayed with him that night. As Brock was considerably heavier than when he used to do the shooting star, Briscoe advised against it. Brock had gone from 265 to 300, but he was afraid his fans would think less of him unless he pulled off such stunts. Brock's rage carried on even in the hospital because he couldn't believe that something had happened to him. The doctor attempted to talk to him, but Lesnar kept chanting, "I want to go." The result of an x-ray dictated that it would be best for him to spend the night. Thankfully, he received great medical care, which he was happy about. He also finally calmed down. These sedatives might have played a part in that. Over the course of his career, he has not only won multiple titles in WWE, Lesnar has also made the transition to MMA and won the UFC heavyweight title. For his childhood friend, Justin Gaikowski revealed, "I used to call him broccoli. When you're young, nobody likes to eat broccoli. I'd be like, hey broccoli, you've got bad taste." It's clear Lesnar does not have the best reputation for helping people, but that's not always been the case. WWE was forced to cancel Raw in 2015 due to a snowstorm. Lesnar decided that it was not fair for superstars and fans. Everything was closed on that occasion, but according to Corey Graves, Lesnar allegedly paid a significant amount of money to keep the bar wide open for everybody to make sure they made the best of a crappy situation. What a day. Not all bad things came from that snowstorm. Fun memories, fun times, but let's hope Raw doesn't get canceled ever again. In a wild story, Lesnar was wrestling Big Show in South Africa. That day, Show's stomach was acting up and Lesnar had a case of food poisoning. When Lesnar slammed Big Show, the Giant exploded. As Big Show recalled, "I hit the mat, Brock goes, 'Did you sh-?' I said, 'Yeah.' He goes, 'Haha, you sh-.' Then while I'm laying in the ring after the F5, he keeps stepping on my stomach like he's trying to get more to come out. He had dumped Paul Heyman in the ring too. That was the finish, and then I would usually get up, pull Paul up, throw Paul over my shoulder, and carry Paul out. However, he refused to carry Heyman out on that occasion, telling him what happened. 'What do you mean? You're not going to carry me to the back?' I shit myself. 'What?' I shit my pants. 'I can't hear you. What?' I shit myself. 'Oh, okay. Are you alright?' I'm the guy out the back of the arena with a hose, hosing off my pants." Heyman confirmed the story. Antonio Inoki is probably the most popular wrestling name in Japan. Inoki is even a WWE Hall of Famer. Lesnar revealed a story involving himself and Inoki, which shows in which regard he held himself in those days. One of the traditions in New Japan was for newcomers to the promotion to get slapped by Inoki, the founder. Lesnar let officials know that was not going to happen. Another game I was ready for was the Inoki slap. I guess part of the initiation over Japan is that all the newcomers end up getting slapped by Inoki, who is a living legend over there. I let them know where I stood on that one right away. No one was going to slap me. Not Inoki, not anyone. They got the point. He was involved in New Japan and had an impressive run showing he was capable of wrestling outside WWE. When Lesnar was outside WWE, he had a lot more freedom. He used this to his advantage quite a lot apparently and took a few liberties with other fighters. Chuck O'Neil, former MMA fighter, was on Lesnar's team on The Ultimate Fighter 2010. He and a few other fighters were being picked up in a van from their house when their van was hit from behind by Lesnar in a truck. We had a van that came and picked us up at the house every day. We were rolling up to the training facility. We were just talking, and then we get slammed from behind. We looked behind us, and there was Brock in this huge white truck. He was just laughing, like the normal Lesnar laugh from TV. He was ramming into the van. We get out, we're like, what are you doing? We're thinking it's his truck. He's like, oh, I don't give a shit. It's Dana White's truck anyways. He just smashed into our van. Dana rented him a house and rented him a truck. We were like, what the hell just happened? We weren't really sure. Kurt Angle is an Olympic gold medalist and he made history in WWE. However, when he and Brock got acquainted and had to wrestle, they wanted to test each other. They were put on the spot by the locker room to see who would win in a wrestling match. It was 2003. I didn't want to wrestle Brock. I know he didn't want to wrestle me, but the rest of the guys put me on the spot and I was like, no, he couldn't beat me, but if he thinks he can, let's do this. It kept going back and forth, trying to get us to do this. Eventually, I just went up to Brock and said, hey, let's get this over with. And he said, no, man, I have slippers on. I said, that's okay, we'll go in our bare feet. Said, no, I'm not going to do it. So it didn't happen. However, it would not be long before the two really ended up wrestling. I didn't want to go with him, trust me, but the boys were doing their thing. Now Brock and I were enemies, so we did. The rumors that I completely dominated him, that is not true. It was very close. I took Brock down a couple of times. He didn't take me down, but we went 15 minutes, and there were only 2 takedowns. It was a pretty close battle. Did I win? If you want to give the aggressor the win, then I won, but it was really close. Brock impressed me because he was a college wrestler. There's nothing wrong with that. An NCAA champion is a world-class athlete, but there's a big difference between Olympic gold medal and NCAA champion. That's what I wanted to prove to Brock at the end of the day. Thank God I won, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have heard the end of it. Brock is a dominant wrestler in and out of the ring and has proved himself again and again. On one occasion, Lesnar destroyed Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic in 2018. However, while Rey and Dominic's situations were seemingly unenviable, former WWE diva Summer Rae ended up making a wild comment. WWE posted the video of Lesnar's attack on their Instagram, and below, Summer Rae commented that she was jealous that it was not her getting slammed by Brock. Terry Runnels was once a popular figure in WWE. However, one of her experiences with Brock was not the best, as she told The Sun. Brock did something that if it was in today's day and time, he showed his penis to me and called my name as I was walking past where he was in the dressing room and opened his towel so I could see his manly bits. I would have much rather him not be so disrespectful of a female that's been in this business for as long as I've been. He knew he was going to have a lot of power, that they were going to give him the strap, but at that point, I'd been in this business a long time. I have respect, and what he did was very, very wrong. From a respect standpoint, from a sexual harassment standpoint, it was wrong. Wade Barrett was once on Inside the Ropes talking about how he and other WWE stars were working out in Gold's gym when Lesnar came in. However, throughout his time working out, he was being followed by a starstruck kid who was obviously in awe of Lesnar. When Brock went into the changing room, he told the other wrestlers that the kid was following him. While the kid should have known better, what followed probably traumatized him. Now, obviously in gyms, you get a lot of big bodybuilders and steroid guys and tough looking guys and stuff like that, but nobody has ever seen anything like Brock. People either knew him because he was in WWE, or they knew him because he was in UFC, or they were just looking at him like they had never seen a human being that looked like that before, but everyone was staring at him. Well, we didn't think much of it, and we go, hey Brock, how are you doing? And we leave and head off to the showers, and he goes off and starts working out presumably. So we're finishing up in the changing rooms. We're all putting our suits on and stuff, finishing doing up our shirts, and then all of a sudden, Brock walks into the changing room and he looks at us and goes, this kid keeps following me around every time I go to a machine. He's next to me every time I go to a bench. He always comes and sits next to me. He's really pissing me off. We go, oh, okay, see you at the building. Brock, whatever. And then Brock walks past us and goes into the back room, the toilet area of the changing room. He goes around the corner. Anyways, we're finishing up and then suddenly this nervous 16-year-old nerdy kid pops his head around the locker room. Sometimes we get that and people are excited because they've seen us on TV and we're wrestlers for WWE and they want to meet us. This kid did not care about us at all. It was like we were invisible. He's sneaking around, he's looking past us, and then suddenly he spots the toilet area, which was just around the corner from where we're at. This kid kind of stumbles past, walks around the corner and disappears. A small part of me wanted to tell this kid, no, this isn't the day, but another part of my brain thought, you know, the boy has to learn. So I didn't say anything, just kind of looked at Bray Wyatt and he kind of shrugged his shoulders. We all knew that something bad was about to happen. We were just waiting, we were frozen in time. Suddenly, all you hear is, are you trying to see my penis? Followed by this terrified 16-year-old running out of there, through the door, never to be seen again. Goldberg has returned to WWE multiple times over the last 5 years, keeping him relevant, with new fans seeing the legend of WCW. Still, there are crazy backstage stories about Goldberg fans may not be familiar with. This is Wrestling. I've been hearing the wildest things said about Goldberg. Dolph Ziggler was interviewed by Zinnia Did That, talking about various aspects of his character and career. Goldberg faced Undertaker nearly gave the dead man a fatal injury in the match in Saudi Arabia. Goldberg needed a feud to recover from that debacle, and WWE decided to put him in there with one of the safest workers, Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler said the only time he thought about dying in the ring was when he was in there with Goldberg. A lot of times you don't, but maybe if you're in there with Goldberg, you think about it a lot more. The two only had the one match where Ziggler landed 2 super kicks, but following a spear and jackhammer he lost. He would keep challenging Goldberg to come back and would be punished for it, suffering a lot more attacks before he was finally laid out. Given Goldberg is not known for being a safe wrestler, his concerns are understandable. Goldberg has put the fear of God into the lives of more than one wrestler. Rene Dupree talked about wrestling Goldberg and how dangerous it was. He revealed that during a taping of a segment with Goldberg, the veteran was so stiff that he ended up with a dislocated collarbone. Yeah, he dislocated my collarbone. We had a pre-tape in the back with Goldberg and he hit me with the French flag and we had to do 5 takes. To this day, if I try to flex it, it still hurts. Yeah, he's the shit. He's horrible. Many wrestlers will tell you that. Dupree went on to talk about the fact that Goldberg was signed by WWE even at this age, and said the company must have been desperate to work with the Hall of Famer, and said the reason he was brought back was because WWE was not good at making new stars. Scott Hall would play a huge hand in bringing about the end of Goldberg's undefeated run against Kevin Nash. During the match, he would tase Goldberg, following which Nash was able to take him out and win the title. Hall was familiar with Goldberg and got along with him well during the beginning of his WCW run. However, Hall felt that with time passing, Goldberg became a mark for himself and was someone who did not like to lose matches. Hall said that over time, Goldberg started to believe he could never lose. When Mr. McMahon found out that Goldberg thought about himself in this manner, he made sure to bring Goldberg back to earth during his first run in WWE. Vince did not book him as strongly as Goldberg wanted. The discontent was such that Goldberg decided to quit and would not have anything to do with WWE for the next 12 years. When he finally returned, it was to face Brock Lesnar, and since then he has once again become a fixture in WWE. There are a lot of negative stories about Goldberg. The former WCW champion appears to have had a talent for leaving a bad impression on people, either because of his in-ring style or because of the attitude. However, it should be noted that outside the ring, Goldberg was very pleasant in person most of the time. Christian and Goldberg were once at a live event for WWE. The next town they had to go to was quite a distance and Christian was tired. Goldberg offered Christian a solution and invited him to come aboard his private plane. Goldberg might have gotten the most out of the hype surrounding him, but he was never stingy when it came to sharing these spoils with his colleagues. Eric Bischoff may have lost the Monday Night Wars, but he is someone worthy of respect. As the only one to have challenged Vince McMahon to a war in wrestling and having won for 83 weeks in a row, he made McMahon put his money where his mouth was. It was a very hot period of wrestling, and one of the best creations he made during this time was that of Goldberg. Goldberg was not someone with a lot of experience in wrestling, but Bischoff presented him in such a manner that fans could not help but support him. He said he felt the character would have failed had it come around a few years before that red hot period of wrestling. Bischoff went on to say that these days Goldberg does not have that same passion. Goldberg is doing it for the money. Come on. This is not love our business or love to get out there and perform. In my opinion, sorry Bill, you and I aren't close friends, but we are friends. And if what I'm saying, Bill, offends you, then I apologize because I don't mean it to. But come on, dude, do you think he's doing it for the fun, or do you think he's doing it for the money? It's smart. It's not a bad thing. I'm not putting it down. If I had the ability of Bill's age and looked the way Bill did and someone gave me a 7-figure check to work 5 minutes, come on. Let's be honest with ourselves and not bust anybody's balls over this. Anyone would do it. We dream about that opportunity. One thing that has turned everyone against Goldberg was the booking that placed him in a position that was very unsuitable for him. Bray Wyatt was the hottest thing in wrestling after he debuted The Fiend. He won the Universal title after a controversial feud with Seth Rollins that took some steam off of him. Then WWE put him in a match against Goldberg. Goldberg reportedly refused to lose to Wyatt, and given WWE had no objection with that plan, he won the title. The Fiend character was nowhere near the same after. Eventually following a few feuds, none of which really went that well, The Fiend last appeared the night after WrestleMania 37, before Bray was released. Bret Hart is not fond of Goldberg. The WWE legend's career was ended when he was in WCW facing Goldberg. Goldberg hit him with a stiff thrust kick that gave Hart a bad concussion that forced him to retire early. When Hart was on Broken Skull Sessions, he held nothing back, saying this about Goldberg: "I always knew what I was doing. I would hurt myself before I even hurt another wrestler. And I just wish some of the wrestlers I worked with, especially at the end, like Goldberg. He was one of the most unprofessional wrestlers to ever work in the business. For Bill Goldberg to be in the Hall of Fame, he hurt everybody that he worked with. Goldberg, to me, he was one of the most unprofessional wrestlers to ever work in the business. For Bill Goldberg to be in the Hall of Fame, he hurt everybody that he worked with. You might as well wrestle a real gorilla. He was the most dangerous guy to work with." Given Hart's opinion of Goldberg, there's no wonder that Ziggler thinks of death when entering a ring with him. In one of the better known stories about Goldberg backstage, Raven shared Goldberg found himself in trouble when he put a wrong foot with Chris Jericho. The legend revealed the two had been getting on each other's nerves, and when it came to blows, it was Jericho that came out on top. Jericho also talked about the incident. He shared they were having an argument backstage. Goldberg then turned it physical, grabbing Jericho by the throat. He wrote about it saying that when Goldberg made this move, he knew he had to do something and swatted his hand. He then gave Goldberg a two-handed push. Goldberg charged him, trying to take him down. Jericho moved out of the way. He then grabbed Goldberg in a front face lock. I still had the idea that he was going to morph into a savage animal, throw me off, and draw and quarter me, but he never did it. It seemed that the Goldschlager was all smoke and mirrors. We scuffed back into the dressing room and were finally broken up by Arn Anderson, Terry Taylor, Hurricane Christian, and Booker T. Nash Mantis continued to sit in his chair in the corner of the room watching the festivities. Jericho basically said Goldberg was someone who could run his mouth, but when it came to backing it up, he often fell short. The two men would be unfriendly with each other for a long time, with them recently putting their differences aside. When WWE contract negotiations started, reports emerged that Goldberg was wanting the biggest deal on the roster with the fewest dates. Goldberg thought given his WCW run, he was a star. Many of the wrestlers had issues with Goldberg immediately, and many were upset the newcomer felt he deserved a contract better than veterans in the company. Goldberg did not really care what everyone else thought of him, as he felt he was above every other. Linda McMahon was far more involved in WWE back in the day. Now more involved with politics, Linda has taken a back seat from working in WWE. WWE immediately regretted giving Goldberg a huge contract in 2003. The feuds against Jericho and Triple H were not up to the mark, and the fact that he was not that great in the ring meant he was a poor fit. He did not manage to work in the best way with the two top heels. Linda did not hold back in criticizing Goldberg. During a conference call in 2003, she mentioned that she was disappointed by Goldberg's run. This was something that upset Goldberg and was one of the reasons he ended up leaving. Some things Goldberg does on a regular basis have made fans think he is not all there. Goldberg appeared on the January 23, 2017 episode of Raw bleeding from his forehead. He was bleeding profusely by the time he made it to the ring, and then the promo he delivered was atrocious. It seemed obvious he was not all there. It turned out he had given himself a concussion. Before making his way to the ring as a part of his ring entrance, he headbutts the door. It was a pre-game ritual for him, and he always did it. WWE was also unhappy with it, and Goldberg has since apparently retired the headbutt. The Undertaker does not often criticize people online, but during the Last Ride documentary, he opened up on his match against Goldberg. He said the match that took place in Saudi Arabia was nearly catastrophic. Goldberg would later apologize for knocking himself out when he ran into the ring post that night. Michelle McCool commented on it, saying it was a train wreck. It was not anything he wanted. It was not anything I'm sure Goldberg wanted or the fans wanted. However, it was Taker's disappointment surrounding the match that was sad to see. It's just like, wow, that was really close to being catastrophic. The match was supposed to be a long-awaited dream match between the two, but thanks to the botch was almost fatal. After the concussion, Goldberg dropped Taker on his head from the jackhammer and could not even get up in the piledriver position. Undertaker had to bring the match to a sad end with a chokeslam. While he may be a top star in WWE, Seth Rollins has not always had the best reputation, be it among fans or talent. This is Wrestling Up, and here are 10 wild things said about Rollins. Rollins had posted a picture of a forest with 3 people wearing black robes with pointy masks or hats to complete the look on Instagram to help promote the Boy and the Bear coffee. Rollins faced immediate backlash and deleted the picture. They were supposed to be pics of witches, but fans said they were pictures of Klansmen and have since alluded to him being a racist. One fan came out in his support, saying Rollins was one of the first white athletes to say Black Lives Matter publicly. Y'all know that wasn't the KKK he posted. Rollins responded with, "It was witches for a creepy coffee thing I'm helping a friend with. My apologies if anyone was confused. F the KKK, F racism." Last year, after Money in the Bank, Becky Lynch awarded her Raw Women's title to the winner Asuka as she announced her pregnancy. In controversial fashion, Jim Cornette said he felt sorry for Lynch's fiancé Rollins, saying this about Becky having children while at the peak of her career. "She's got plenty of time left. What would you do if your wife came home and said, instead of making $1 million next year, I'm gonna just be a raging jerk for the next 9 months, then give you more to worry about around the house?" Rollins took exception, saying it made me lose a lot of respect for someone who a lot of people had already kind of lost respect for, and I was still holding on to hope that there was a personal connection between Jim and I that he would think twice before making just some egregious comments about women about my wife. I can't forgive them. I don't even want to repeat them. Rollins had said he had no interest in ever facing Matt Riddle. Riddle also made disparaging comments about Rollins. The origin of the heat was Riddle's wife calling Lynch and others in WWE straight, skinny, jiggly fat. Since then, the post has been deleted. A fan who had spent time with Riddle during the Survivor Series weekend of 2019 said throughout the entire weekend, Riddle talked crap about Rollins, and how he never evolved, how he did not take care of his opponents in the ring, how he was stale. This was not just one conversation, it was every time I saw Riddle that weekend. The two are said to have put the past behind them, though. Some have suffered injuries at the hands of Rollins, with even Bret Hart calling him out for being unsafe. When facing John Cena, Rollins had a knee that broke Cena's nose. As Hart claimed, he knees him so hard and so recklessly and so dangerously he could easily kill somebody with a knee like that to the face. It's a testimony to Cena. A, he finished the match, and B, he didn't get a shotgun and shoot Rollins when he came through the curtain. Rollins responded by saying his fellow WWE stars did not take Hart's comments too seriously and made jokes about them. In the future, Rollins injured Sting, ending his WWE career after after a buckle bomb. Sting did not blame Rollins for the move, though it continued with another powerbomb against the barricade in a match with Finn Balor. Seeing the eventual winner of the match injured, Balor won the Universal title but had to vacate it thanks to his hurt shoulder. Fans blamed Rollins, his heart spoke out. I take no great pleasure in saying I told you so, but if you're a pro wrestler and you keep hurting people and or yourself, clearly you're doing it wrong. I wrestled a very realistic and physical style, and not once in 23 years did I ever hurt one opponent. Rollins needs to improve his technique and become the safest. I saw this coming. If anything, WWE producers are negligent for not speaking up about it to him. Instead, they're probably gushing with joy, slapping him on the back, telling him great job. PJ Braun, formerly the partner of Caitlyn, said Rollins sent Caitlyn pictures when they were married. Caitlyn would apparently dismiss the pics by saying Rollins was simply a flirty guy. This caused a huge rift between them, and he promised he would rip Seth's arms off if he ever got a hold of him. Rollins was sending, while I was still married, I'll call her my ex-wife, naked pictures of himself getting out of the shower. I saw it one day, it caused a huge fight between me and her. She was like, that's just who he is, he's a flirty guy. He even got in trouble for having his junk out on Twitter. I'm like, he knows that you were married, what is going on? Since Caitlyn was seemingly not bothered about the accusation and Rollins has not responded, the matter remains unclear. Rollins, as Universal Champion, was standing up for his fellow WWE superstars, talking about the high quality of the wrestling content in the company. Then Will Ospreay chimed in saying that while he was alive, there was no one better than him. Ospreay talked about how he had been far more active and had more matches than Rollins in 2019. Rollins had a blunt response asking him to compare bank accounts while talking about how he had a month off with a broken back. Ospreay responded, you love adding stuff, don't you? I mean, the original question was, find anyone else alive who does what I do as well as I do it as often as I do it. No talk of money, no talk of Ricochet, you said anyone. Here I am, just as consistent, just as good. Hope the back heals up. Ospreay went on to say, it's a little bit of friendly banter. I love Rollins, he's one of the best. But you asked, find me someone alive. As far as I'm concerned, I'm breathing. The last time I heard about an amazing Rollins match was his one against AJ, and if you can't get a good match out of AJ Styles, you should leave the planet. I'm still here, and I think my run this year, not just in New Japan, in the Indies, and everywhere I've been, I don't do a terrible TV match, I just go hard every single night. If you give me an opportunity to show what I can do, I do it. The tweet about bank accounts drew the ire of fans, with Rollins apologizing. There was a time fans were excited about the future because it looked like Rollins was teasing a feud with CM Punk through his tweets. Rollins tweeted to Punk asking him to fight. Punk responded by saying he was an analyst and was going to talk about wrestling and the good, that is the evolution of women's wrestling, and the bad. Rollins seemed to take that as something of a shot at him, and asked Punk not to talk about him, but fight him. Punk went on to say, Seth needs to stop tweeting and realize it's better to let people think you're a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Punk also said that Rollins was trying to use Punk to stay relevant. Rollins responded, but if he wants to come on our show and run his mouth about me and a company he's had no part of for the last 5 years, then I'm going to stand up for us. This is a place that has given me everything. Of course I'm going to have its back. I'm not going to let you push it around and push me around and act like you're so cool. You couldn't bust a cherry in a fruit fight. I want to make some money, so if Punk wants to talk smack, I've invited him a million times to come to my ring, where you can't hide behind anything, no desk in LA. Come on, let's do this thing. Vince McMahon was apparently furious at Rollins for teasing a feud that WWE could not deliver on. The biggest controversy surrounding Rollins remains about some private images of his and his ex-girlfriends. First, a nude selfie of Zara Schreiber, a model and a wrestler for NXT, popped up on Rollins' Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The picture appeared on the WWE website as it picks up tweets from their top stars. Rollins was dating Lewis Schultz, and in response, in what seems to be revenge, she posted naked pictures of Rollins on her own Twitter account, captioning them Zahara, which was a misspelling of Rollins' ex. Schultz went on to write several posts on her friend's Facebook page where she mocked Rollins and quoted things she thought Rollins had said to Schreiber. I hate my life and my fiance. I just wanted to run away with you. All of the pics and Facebook posts were soon deleted. It was an accident, as Rollins said the images were distributed without his consent, as he had split from Schreiber in 2016. WWE circulated a memo asking wrestlers to not talk about this. What made it wilder was that Zara had been terminated by WWE after Instagram posts surfaced from 2012 that featured swastikas. With her becoming a household name and a main event WWE star, there have been some interesting stories attached to the man. This is Wrestling Up, and your wild things said about Becky Lynch. New wrestlers are supposed to respect veterans in WWE. Now on social media, new wrestlers often have Twitter feuds with veterans, with them mainly poking fun. Becky had taken a shot at Edge and Beth Phoenix online, which was something Edge did not like. Becky went on to bring up Edge's affair with Lita, among other things in the feud. Meanwhile, Edge took a shot at Becky, bringing up her old gimmick in wrestling where she had been an Irish dancing girl. It was all in good fun. Apparently this was something that Ric Flair didn't catch on to and had real heat with Becky early on before he contacted Edge. This social media stuff, I'm just starting to get the hang of it. I had to call Edge up and say, tell me Becky Lynch isn't really shooting on you. My god, it was ticking me off. There was a time when WWE never acknowledged that two wrestlers may be dating in real life. Today everyone knows that Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch are together, and when they started dating they were top stars on Raw, with them even having a mixed tag team feud against King Corbin and Lacey Evans. This took momentum away from both champions, creating friction with fans. Becky admitted she hated the storyline and felt it was something she never wanted to portray on TV, saying this to Irish Mirror. People don't want to see that. They want to see two badasses fighting side by side. Think of it like the Avengers, with men and women fighting together and making you root for the heroes. When it's a case of this girlfriend, that boyfriend, every 5 minutes people are like, Jesus Christ. While WWE may encourage two feuding stars to throw barbs across social media, Becky Lynch got in trouble backstage thanks to her shots online against Ronda Rousey, and was even told to tone down the insults. WWE told Lynch to continue using Twitter, but said they felt she was hurting Ronda's credibility. It says something when you're told to hold back against the baddest woman on the planet. Something fans may not know and that Becky has talked about is how she nearly retired long before WWE. In September 06, she had trained under Finn Balor but suffered a head injury that led to a 6-year hiatus, and during that time she had all sorts of other jobs, being a flight attendant and working in a sandwich shop. But when the time came, she made it to WWE. Only the best work with The Rock. On SmackDown's Fox debut, the opening segment saw Rock and Becky humiliating King Corbin before beating him up. As it turns out, Rock wanted to work with Becky and is apparently trying to help Becky's acting career. Rock has been helping and guiding me. He's just been very giving, and I think they all are, because they've all been there and they're all ready to look after the next generation. According to reports, Rock was going to be disappointed if he did not get to share the stage with Becky when he made his way back. Matt Riddle's wife Lisa posted on Instagram calling wrestlers like Becky skinny, jiggly, fat, despite them being advertised as athletes. This led to heat between Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. The post was deleted, but not before fans called her out for body shaming. Becky is known for being extremely passionate about the wrestling business. She has been away from WWE for a long time now, and given her time away from the ring, she has been missing out on a lot. That does not mean that she has not pitched stories for when she was out. According to Stephanie McMahon, even though Becky has been unable to be in WWE, she pitched a story for other stars that involved herself as well that ended up being rejected. I kept talking to Becky all during her pregnancy and after. She was actually pitching someone jumping her in the maternity ward. The pitch was taken well by WWE and the writers team, as they felt that it showed her passion for the business yet again. However, given the controversial nature of the segment, it was rejected. Former wrestling manager and promoter Jim Cornette had something to say about Becky Lynch leaving WWE after relinquishing her title thanks to pregnancy, mentioning that she could have planned to have a child later in life given she was the current champion and is a big name. You can't always be on top of the wrestling business in a $1 million a year spot or more, but you can have a baby. What is she? Can she be 30? Still, she's got many more years before the easy bake oven gets shut off. She can have all those problems like a descended stomach and stretch marks and hemorrhoids and hormone problems problems and mood swings and all the other joys of motherhood later on when she ain't making $1 million a year. She's got plenty of time left. What would you do if your wife came home and said, instead of making $1 million next year, I'm gonna basically just be a raging jerk for the next 9 months, then give you more to worry about around the house? Rollins did not take too kindly to his comments and expressed his disappointment, saying he had respected Cornette for giving him an opportunity in Ring of Honor, but after those comments he felt he could not forgive him. Vince McMahon is one of the most eccentric people. Things that are seemingly straightforward and simple to most are not so for Vince. On the other side of things, he can be a genius when it comes to deciding storylines that are happening inside a wrestling ring. While he is one of the more controversial figures in the business, McMahon seemingly knows who his biggest stars are and treats them as his top talent. His relationship with his handpicked stars is often one that can be compared to parents and children. This was particularly evident with Vince wanting to make sure that his wrestlers don't do anything to change their appearance. They're not allowed to get visible tattoos without permission, and they have to follow a multitude of other rules when it comes to their looks. While there were no rules against tans, Vince McMahon found himself very confused when Becky Lynch came back tanned after WrestleMania. At Mania 35, Becky was a part of the first ever women's main event and had time off after. When she returned, she was a bit more orange. Vince McMahon, for one, was very confused about what had happened. She had returned from an island visit with a tan, and Vince was apparently so confused that he took Seth Rollins aside to ask him a personal question about Becky's new look. We spent 2 weeks in Hawaii, which was amazing. We hadn't taken a Monday off in ever. When we came back, I was sitting with Vince. We were talking about something and we were done. And I was about to leave and he goes, "Can I ask you a personal question? Did Becky get a tan?" I was like, "Yeah, she'll tell you. She identifies as a tan person now. She got a great tan in Hawaii," but the way he phrased it, I was like, oh no, how is this going to go? Am I going to fight Vince McMahon right now? Early in her main roster run, Becky won the SmackDown Women's title, but she soon lost the belt and took a back seat in the division. As it turns out, there was a reason for this. WWE can have issues with pushing talent from outside the US due to different accents. Becky has a strong Irish accent, yet they've gotten past that prejudice with her. Still, according to Brian Alvarez early on, Kevin Dunn hated Lynch's accent and did not want to hear it anymore. It's true that for a time Becky did not speak much on the microphone, but her eventual push saw her become more vocal. In a matter of months, Becky Lynch went from being perhaps the most overlooked of the four horsewomen to being the biggest WWE star. Her evolution into the man led her to the main event of WrestleMania 35, where she became the only woman to pin Ronda Rousey, becoming the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion. In the months that followed, WWE did everything possible to establish Lynch as a megastar. Her popularity soared to new heights, so naturally other people tried to capitalize. Adult film star Haley Ryder was one of these people. In the hopes of capitalizing on the man's popularity, she began using Becky Lynch's name in her movies. It wasn't long before one of her videos began circulating, but it was obvious that it was an adult film star and not the WWE wrestler. While Ryder does share a passing resemblance with Lynch, no one actually bought into this. Regardless, the video reportedly garnered over 11 million views, while the exact same video using her own name amassed under 30,000. This is a dangerous precedent to set. While Becky Lynch is a WWE name, that does not change the fact that far more people recognize the man by her in-ring name as opposed to her real name. In addition, WWE is trying to maintain a relatively squeaky clean image, and having one of their top names be related to the adult film industry in any capacity whatsoever is a no-go. This is absolutely something that WWE and Becky would want fans to forget. Vince McMahon is one of the most eccentric personalities, and when it comes to his time in the wrestling business, he's also been very influential. The chairman is famous as well as infamous for quite a few incidents throughout his life. This is Wrestling Up, and here are the wildest things said about Vince McMahon. The WWE chairman does what he pleases and knows how to loosen up to enjoy a good time. According to Bret Hart, he was at a party at a San Antonio strip bar. McMahon was drunk and had fun with the wrestler. They decided to head to Ric Flair's hotel suite. They were given a police escort at 3 in the morning, but Flair was not present in his room. McMahon went up to the front desk and got Flair's room key because he was the boss. He decided that he wanted to use the restroom, but instead he went to Flair's room and urinated on his bed to get back at the Nature Boy for not being at the party. Vince ended up paying for the privilege and was was not the only one who peed. I remember, I don't know how they got in. I think it was Kurt Hennig, to be honest. Whenever someone had to go to the bathroom, they started peeing on the king-size bed in Flair's room, and somehow it was to get back at Flair. I'm not sure how. It was like a rib. Everybody would pee. There'd be like 4 or 5 guys peeing on the bed. Everybody peed on the bed. I remember Vince McMahon peed on the bed, and I don't know whatever happened, but I know Vince paid for everything. When Vince arrived at the party earlier that night, he was drunk. They went to the strip club to party. It was the same night that they found out they were going to start drug testing. Wrestlers would be given 2 strikes before they were fired. Everyone was concerned and a bit upset. Thus, when the boss showed up drunk, Hulk Hogan decided to pull a prank. He tried to get the Legion of Doom to hit Vince with their finisher. Animal picked him up on his shoulder, but when it came time to hit the finisher, Hawk lightly touched Vince. However, Jim Neidhart was mad about it, saying the Hart Foundation would not have been afraid to hit the move. Instead, it was the Hart Foundation who ended up hitting Vince with the heart attack, taking him out in the middle of a strip bar. I remember Neidhart got so mad. He really got upset. I remember he looked at me and he goes, Hart Foundation would have done it. I think I said something like, yeah, we would have done it. I remember I had 2 shots of Jack Daniels, 1 in each hand. I remember looking around, and all of a sudden I realized what I had said to Jim. All of a sudden I turned around and Jim had Vince in the bear hug for the Hart Foundation move. I just remember Hogan and a bunch of guys looking at me like, are you going to do it? Or are you just going to do a powder puff 1-2? I just took his head off, just took it straight off, clotheslined Vince right in the bar, took him right to the ground. I remember both our heads banging on the cement carpet. I can remember Vince looking at me while we were both on the ground. He turned his head to me and I was just lying flat right beside him. With that move, that flying clothesline I used to do, the only way to do it is you've got to swing your legs up in the air and land on your back, shoulder blades, so you don't get hurt. Same with Vince, I pulled him down. I protected his head and everything, but we landed with a pretty good thud on the ground. Vince looked at me and he said, you owe me a drink. I thought that's the last thing Vince needs is another drink, but I said, what are you drinking? He said, Doers on Ice. McMahon might be the highest authority in WWE, but he is prone to doing whatever he wants. Vince challenged WWE writer Court Bauer to a drag race on an open highway. Vince ended up boxing Court into and was heading for road construction. The writer was forced to slam on the brakes so he could avoid dying. Vince didn't even wait to see if he was okay and sped off, having won the race. Bauer responded to the question whether Vince was actually trying to kill him or not by saying that Vince likes to win. McMahon often spends creative meetings eating steak. Chris Jericho mentioned that the worst thing for a writer to deal with when pitching a story is having to face a hungry Vince. On Talk Is Jericho, Court Bauer compared a hungry Vince to a tiger that had not been fed. It's the truth. We would always make sure that he ate at the beginning of the meeting, and he wanted to make sure his executive assistant was literally with him, flanking him as he came in like, thank God she's got the roast beef wrap, because if she didn't, we're all screwed. There have been many stars and writers over the years who have talked about Vince McMahon's hatred for sneezing. Stephanie McMahon confirmed this on the Bill Simmons podcast. He hates sneezing because it's involuntary and he cannot control it. He hates sneezing. It's anyone, but especially when it's him. He hates it when someone else sneezes, but apparently his own sneezes are worse. Not only that, but Vince McMahon also hates another thing, nodding. He feels like nodding influences the room. If someone is talking and someone else is nodding, you're going to influence the room. You shouldn't influence the room. Let people think what they want to think. McMahon was at Dick Ebersol's birthday party at a bowling alley. The NBC executive said something to Vince that he did not like. Vince and Pat Patterson then decided to steal the shoes of the executive as well as the executive's wife, according to Dave Meltzer. So when they're done bowling, the Dayfords can't find their shoes and McMahon and Patterson are laughing, so they figure, okay, joke, where's the shoe? But McMahon and Patterson never gave up the shoes and they actually had to leave the party with 1 shoe each. It's one thing to do it to a guy, but then doing it to his wife? The executive had to go home wearing his bowling shoes. Vince would let the executive know what he did later by phoning him up. He was not sorry and instead said, that's what you get, pal. Despite having great talent, Gail Kim was never given a fair chance in WWE. Jim Ross revealed he wanted to hire Kim, however Vince was not keen on the idea. Ross went on to reveal how he had to convince him to hire her. I remember Vince said, "You want to hire this Asian girl, right?" "I don't know, I just don't know." And I said, "Well Vince, you know there's a lot of guys that like Asian women. There's Asian porn sites." Kim also responded to these stories saying, "Nothing I'm really surprised at concerning Vince. Yes, it's in poor taste, but it's his character." Vince loves to play pranks, but sometimes he can take it too far. In an interview with Chris Van Vliet, Jonathan Coachman talked about the prank that was called the greatest rib in the history of the company by McMahon. The coach was told by Gerald Briscoe that he had to run a football pool for all the guys in the back. Coach made photocopies and was passing them out and people were paying for it when suddenly he sees two police officers approach him. The two cops told him that he had committed a crime. They then entered McMahon's room to tell the WWE chairman that the coach was running an illegal pool and that it was a felony in the state of North Carolina. I said, "Come on guys, I mean this seems kind of silly. It's a $10 football pool." They're like, "It doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million, it's the same felony." So we're walking down and the cops are on either side of me and all of these people are looking at me. We get to Vince's office and they're like, "Does Vince run the whole show here?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "We really need to tell him." And I go, "No, we don't. We don't need to." Yeah, they knock on the door and I'm like, "Are you kidding?" Apparently Triple H, Stephanie, Gerald Briscoe, and Kevin Dunn all came into Vince's room where McMahon then shouted at Coach for doing such a thing. Vince said that it would be $1,500 to bail out the coach, but Vince said he wasn't paying. Police asked for a towel to cover Coach's face to prevent others from seeing him being arrested, but unfortunately Vince said he didn't have a towel and instead gave him a pair of old boxer shorts. They said, "Well, unfortunately when somebody's been arrested for a felony, they have to be like handcuffs, so we're about to put handcuffs on him. Do you have like a towel or something so at least we can put it over his hands so people don't see that he's handcuffed?" Vince walks over to his gym bag and he picks up his boxer shorts that he wore to work out in that day. Oh my god, whips them at me and they stick to my face. So I got Vince's ball sweat on my face. The cop, like with 2 fingers, takes it off my face and puts it over my hand. The coach was terrified. He was seen by the security head Jimmy Tillis, who said he would bail him. Halfway there, the police were told to come back to pick Tillis up. When they got back to the arena, Coach finally realized it was an elaborate prank. All they were doing was killing time to get everybody to come out of the back of the arena, and they were standing almost like in a pyramid with Vince right at the front and then everybody else behind. I see everybody standing out there and I still don't know what's happening. This whole process that I told you in about 5 minutes, it took 45 minutes to pull this off from start to finish, which is why he calls it the greatest rib in the history of the company, because it went way better than they ever could have imagined. He went to the part of the arena where no one could see him and he started sobbing. Coach said this was a sign of how much Vince loved him. McMahon's story about trying to wrestle Kurt Angle on a plane is well known. Unfortunately, when Angle fought back, Undertaker woke up and thought Angle was attacking Vince and went after Kurt. The quintessential alpha male Vince McMahon always liked to prove himself even against Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle. On a plane ride, Vince decided to sneak up behind Angle and take him down amateur style, starting an impromptu match in the aisle. The ruckus woke a sleeping Undertaker who, seeing his boss about to get put in his place, sprang into action and took out Angle before he knew what hit him. That's company loyalty. Vince also tried to show he was stronger than Mark Henry by inviting him to a workout session. He tried to out-rep Henry on each exercise. Henry decided he had nothing to prove and quit before Vince did. In the end though, Henry would have the last laugh, as Vince then called him up and said that he had made a horrible mistake as McMahon was in a lot of pain. Vince is someone who enjoys jokes that involve fecal matter on TV. He heard Briscoe had once puked because someone had farted in a car with him, and Vince found that funny. He then decided to try to get Briscoe to puke himself. Jim Ross talked about the night and said that he tried to fart, but unfortunately, he sharted. On top of that, he had to go out after that and deliver a promo in front of a crowd. Jerry Briscoe has a very weak stomach. We're in the Meadowlands doing Monday Night Raw in the height of Mr. McMahon's evil character. He's got his back to Briscoe, who's sitting at this table, and Briscoe was the guy that time time the show out, so he turns his back to Briscoe, and I'll never forget it. Vince had a pair of khaki-colored slacks, nice slacks, and probably a $5,000 sports coat custom made. He's waiting on his music cue to make his walk to the ring, and so he turned his back to Briscoe to deposit something in the air, and it got liquid. He sharded. It still stunk, and Briscoe still almost fell out of his chair, holding his stomach and dry heaving. So mission accomplished, except he's wearing khakis, and he's got a brown stain, the old racing skid mark, and he's got to go out and do his bit. So they told the production truck, and the truck started laughing, and of course, no one in the truck had the balls to shoot it, so they had to shoot around. So they told me and Lawler, hey, if you get a chance, look at the old man's butt. So Lawler and I are sitting at ringside. One of the times Vince turned around, sure enough, we saw a little brown. Bruce Pritchard talked about the story, but added another element. Apparently Triple H chased Briscoe through the arena with the soiled underwear. This was the last thing of the night, right before he went out. No, he went out and came back and took them off and I guess cleaned up. And Hunter chased Jerry Briscoe around with the shitty underwear, and he put on some warm-up pants. During an AMA, Mr. Kennedy shared a story. WWE was on their way to Iraq. They were flying and 90% of the wrestlers were sleeping. Vince decided to crawl on the floor with hard candies under his arm. He would hide behind something, pop up, and throw a candy at the face of a wrestler. He would hide when they woke up and looked around seeing nothing before he would get up and do it again while laughing hysterically. The Katie Vick angle was one of the worst storylines. Triple H accused Kane of having intercourse with a corpse of his dead girlfriend and then reenacted it on TV. Vince defended it in his documentary, saying making love to a dead person, a female dead person, when you're a guy and you're in this thong type thing, it's like, come on, this is high comedy, if there ever is. In the 80s, Rita Marie Chatterton was the first female referee in WWE. She would claim that she got into Vince's limo to discuss her contract. Apparently, McMahon forced her to have sex to save her career. Vince allegedly raped her that night, July 16, 1986. She resigned soon after, and the story was told on Geraldo Rivera's Now It Can Be Told show. The 90s was a bad time to be in WWE despite it being one of the most popular eras of wrestling. Fans may not know about a lot that happened at the time, but WWE was involved in a steroid trial. However, even before they were involved in another scandal, Terry Garvin and Mel Phillips were accused of a young ring boy. They were fired and never brought back, but the boy Tom Cole said everyone in WWE, including Vince, knew about it. McMahon claimed he didn't know, and the two were fired when he came to know, but Cole continued to claim that was not the case. Paul Heyman revealed the WWE chairman is in a battle against his own beard. Heyman said Vince has the ability to grow a great beard, but he chooses not to. He told Heyman that he wouldn't grow his beard because he could not let it win. He said that if he let it win, then he would never be the same. Stephanie McMahon was pregnant with her first child when her father had a wild idea. He decided that since he was a heel, they could turn the pregnancy into an angle. Instead of Triple H as the dad, he decided to suggest he would be the father. Stephanie was disgusted and refused, but then he suggested that Shane be the father. Stephanie refused the idea and Triple H was furious. Former UFC fighter Chael Sonnen shared a story of how Vince McMahon tried to sabotage the UFC. UFC was running The Ultimate Fighter right after Raw would air on Mondays. Vince had an issue with the show being advertised during Raw, as he felt it was hurting his product. So Vince is saying to Dana privately, why would anybody watch my scripted show when they can just wait till it's over to watch your real show? Stop advertising to my audience. And Dana shot with him and goes, Vince, I'm on Spike, you're on Spike. And that's where it ends. Who Spike decides to run the marketing and the advertising, and to piggyback off of, man, it's got nothing to do with me, and Vince again puts it on Dana and says, do not advertise your show during my show again. That week, Vince McMahon contacts Mike Goldberg, and he tells Mike, I will give you $100,000 to no call, no show the UFC on Friday. So Goldberg doesn't get to warn anybody. He just can't show up and he can't call in. He just needs to stick them without an announcer. Goldberg refused the offer, and apparently instead of hating Vince for this, it made Dana White respect Vince more. Jimmy Snuka could have been found guilty of the murder of Nancy Argentino long before he was unfit to stand trial had it not been for Vince. In 1983, when Nancy was declared dead, it turned out that she had been fatally struck in the head with a blunt object. The fact that Snuka had previously attacked her, it was not too difficult to understand what had happened. Vince interrupted proceedings and ran negotiations with authorities on his behalf. Snuka was told to listen to Vince and pretend not to be fluent in English. Snuka's accounts of the event varied, showing his guilt, but Vince had a meeting with police, after which Snuka walked away unscathed.